Chapter 41, Brain Domain Development. At this moment, a figure descended from the sky and landed beside Black Widow. Spider-Man. Black Widow frowned slightly. Spider-Man walked to Fang Ye. Seeing this, Natasha's expression focused as she stared at the newcomer. The figure that descended from the sky was none other than the recently appearing superhero in New York, known for wearing a spider-tight suit and being skilled in spewing spider silk, the Spider-Man. S.H.I.E.L.D. had been keeping an eye on Spider-Man for a while now. Black Widow also had some knowledge about Spider-Man's abilities. If it were a one-on-one fight, none of the three of them would be a match for Spider-Man. And now, Spider-Man was clearly on Fang Ye's side. Standing by Fang Ye's side, Peter Parker asked, "Hey, are you alright?" "I'm fine. Thanks for helping," Fang Ye replied, looking disheveled with his clothes stained in blood, but he remained composed. Seeing that Fang Ye didn't seem to have any major injuries, Peter Parker felt relieved. In fact, when the explosion occurred during the assassination attempt on Fang Ye by Hydra, it caught Peter Parker's attention. Coincidentally, he had just arrived when he saw people attacking Fang Ye. Having met Fang Ye a few times before and feeling that he was a good person, plus the fact that Fang Ye had helped him find his parents' whereabouts, Peter Parker couldn't just stand by and do nothing. However, he didn't know that Fang Ye's claim of helping him find his parents' whereabouts was just a casual lie, and he didn't expect Peter to take it seriously. At this moment, Black Widow stepped forward and interrupted their conversation. "Spider-Man, we are agents of S.H.I.E.L.D, and Fang Ye is a criminal we are pursuing. Do you really want to interfere with S.H.I.E.L.D's affairs?" "Fang Ye is a criminal? Oh my, is today April Fool's Day? Also, what is S.H.I.E.L.D? I've never heard of it before." Peter Parker clearly didn't believe Natasha's words. But come to think of it, who was Fang Ye? He was a well-known entrepreneur and philanthropist. Besides, Peter had some understanding of Fang Ye's character. If Natasha had said others were criminals, he might hesitate, but to say that Fang Ye was a criminal? Peter Parker couldn't possibly believe that. And the three people in front of him clearly had an aggressive aura, not seeming like good people. S.H.I.E.L.D is a secret agency of the United States that few people know about. They want to capture me just because they want to pry into my research. Fang Ye's tone was sarcastic, with a look of disdain. Attack. Seeing that they couldn't come to an agreement, Natasha acted decisively and made her move. Hawkeye and Daredevil attacked Peter Parker while Natasha charged toward Fang Ye. Although Natasha was a woman, Fang Ye didn't dare to underestimate her. "Ha!" Natasha let out a soft cry as she rushed forward. Her movements were agile and swift, taking advantage of her momentum to kick toward Fang Ye's chest. Fang Ye's expression turned serious as he blocked Natasha's kick, but the tremendous force made him retreat 4 or 5 steps. What a ruthless woman. It turned out that while Fang Ye was still finding his footing, Natasha rushed towards him like a cheetah and kicked at his lower body. Finally, Fang Ye's expression changed. If that area had been hit, with Natasha's strength, the consequences would be unimaginable. Fang Ye had to step back once again. Step by step, he retreated. The situation was evident from here on. Natasha completely controlled the pace of the battle, and Fang Ye could only defend himself, always being pressed down by Natasha. When it came to physical fitness, Fang Ye was definitely stronger than Natasha, but in terms of combat skills, he couldn't match her. Moreover, Fang Ye was injured, which somewhat affected his performance. In the short term, he might be able to cope, but in the long run, he was no match for Natasha. "Let's go all out." After being kicked away by Natasha again, Fang Ye got up, a fierce glint appearing in his eyes. He took out a test tube from his pocket, containing a dark red liquid, and without hesitation, he injected it into his arm. The Brain Domain Development Potion? That was the name of the potion. It was given to Fang Ye by Dr. Cabot this morning. The potion was meant to unlock the right brain. Now, in order to deal with Natasha, Fang Ye had no choice but to inject it. It was worth noting that this potion hadn't undergone human testing yet, so nobody knew what would happen after injection. After injecting the potion, Fang Ye felt a slight shock in his mind, and his head began to ache slightly. The brain is divided into the left and right hemispheres, with the left side in charge of rationality and the right side in control of instincts. Under normal circumstances, rationality would suppress instincts, keeping them in check. Only in rare cases would instincts break through rationality. Dr. Cabot developed the potion with the goal of unlocking the right brain, as unleashing human instincts would result in astonishing power. When Fang Ye injected the potion, Natasha didn't stand idle. She jumped into action, kicked Fang Ye away, and then stopped her assault. Natasha didn't really want to kill Fang Ye, just to make him lose his combat ability. "Huh!" Natasha exclaimed in surprise, as after Fang Ye fell to the ground, his body twitched slightly, as if enduring great pain. Thinking back to the potion Fang Ye had injected, Natasha's mind stirred, and she walked over to pick up the broken test tube from the ground. It seems to contain components of mental stimulants. Natasha wasn't a scientist, but she could make a simple judgment about some of the potion's ingredients. To avoid any unforeseen situations, Natasha didn't waste time. She took out a specially made S.H.I.E.L.D handcuff and squatted down next to Fang Ye, intending to handcuff him. After injecting the potion, Fang Ye's consciousness was a bit hazy for a short time, but now he was fully awake. Seeing Natasha trying to handcuff him, Fang Ye's body flicked, and his shoulder instinctively bumped into Natasha's chest, while his arm swiftly twisted, ingeniously unlocking Natasha's hold, and then he bumped her away. Feeling a slight pain in her chest, Natasha furrowed her brows and let out a soft grunt. At the same time, she looked puzzled and astonished, unable to understand how Fang Ye's reaction had been so quick. Just a moment ago, she had him pressed down without a chance to retaliate. Humph! Natasha snorted coldly. When Fang Ye stood up again, she rushed towards him once more, this time aiming to make him completely lose his combat ability. Fang Ye felt a cool breath flowing through his mind. Seeing Natasha's fist coming at him, Fang Ye instinctively dodged his head slightly, evading her attack. His right hand, quick as lightning, caught her fist. Fang Ye twisted with force, taking advantage of Natasha's unstable footing, and his knee bumped into her abdomen. His left hand showed no mercy as it struck her face. Still want to fight? Fang Ye smirked, his eyes cold and emotionless, staring fixedly at Natasha. Seeing Daredevil and Hawkeye still tangled up with Spider-Man, Fang Ye shouted loudly, "Stop it! Otherwise, I don't mind sending her to the afterlife. I want to see what S.H.I.E.L.D can do to me if I kill her. Let Natasha go." Hawkeye and Daredevil's expression slightly changed as they shouted. After shouting, the two exchanged a glance, and they both snorted lightly. Apparently, their relationship wasn't as good as it seemed on the surface. Fang Ye actually knew a bit about the situation. In the original story, Natasha had an ambiguous relationship with many men, including Hawkeye and Daredevil. How could their relationship be good? "Hey, buddy, I didn't expect you to be quite capable, actually managing to subdue this woman." Peter Parker took the opportunity to break free from the entanglement, shooting a web and landing beside Fang Ye. Fang Ye glanced at him and smiled, nodding slightly. If it weren't for Peter Parker's help today, he might have been in trouble. However, just at this moment, two figures emerged from the dark alleys. Ha ha ha, what a wonderful show. Chapter 42, Hellfire Intrusion. Ha ha ha, what an exciting show. A slightly mocking laughter suddenly echoed in the ears of the crowd. Fang Ye furrowed his eyebrows and looked in the direction of the voice, where two figures were leisurely strolling out from a dim alley. The newcomers were a man and a woman, and the mocking laughter came from the man. Hellfire Club. Fang Ye's expression slightly darkened, and his tone carried a hint of gravity. The Hellfire Club had once invited Fang Ye to join, and he had dealt with the members of the Hellfire Club before. Coincidentally, he knew one of the two people who had just arrived. The core group of the Hellfire Club was composed of a few influential individuals, most of whom were powerful mutants. The members of the core group were named after chess pieces. Black or white, king, queen, bishop, rook, and the most powerful person became the supreme king, ruling over the Hellfire Club. Among the two newcomers, Fang Ye knew one of them. The core members of the Hellfire Club were the famous White Queen and Black King. The White Queen and Black King were both formidable individuals. One of the White Queen's abilities was telepathy, through which she could read and even forcibly modify the thoughts and memories of others. Overall, among all mutants, the White Queen's telepathic abilities were second only to Professor X. As for the Black King, his ability was energy absorption. By absorbing kinetic energy, he could enhance his own strength, speed, endurance, or replace the need for metabolism. However, the Black King's ability also had its limits. Absorbing too much energy at once would overload him, otherwise, he would have been invincible. "Mr. Fang, we meet again." The White Queen and Black King stopped about 10 meters away, smiling as they greeted Fang Ye. The White Queen had thick, golden, wavy hair cascading casually over her shoulders, and she wore a light blue ultra-short cape, which accentuated her extraordinary figure. At this moment, she wore a charming smile on her stunning face, speaking in a friendly manner, as if greeting an old friend. "I didn't expect the honor of the White Queen's presence. I assume this must be the renowned Black King. It's a pleasure to meet both of you. I just wonder what the Hellfire Club intends to do today." Fang Ye signaled Peter Parker with his right hand, and Peter instantly shot several spider webs, binding Natasha's hands and feet. Natasha glared fiercely at Peter Parker. If it weren't for the spider webs, she might still have a chance to break free from Fang Ye's control. But now, with the resilient spider webs restraining her, she gave up on the idea of escaping Fang Ye's control. "We are here for the superhuman enhancement serum." The Black King smiled, dressed in a white suit, but his tone was icy, and a hint of threat could be heard in his words. We'll give you the superhuman enhancement serum, but will you dare to take it? S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra, Xavier's school, Brotherhood, and other forces are all after it. I'm not underestimating the Hellfire Club, but even if we give you the superhuman enhancement serum, can you protect it? Fang Ye smiled coldly, his tone tinged with irony. The Black King furrowed his brow, for although Fang Ye's words were unpleasant, they were true. Although the Hellfire Club was powerful, they wouldn't dare to offend so many forces at the same time. Moreover, these forces were no weaker than the Hellfire Club, some were even stronger. The superhuman enhancement serum and the Hulk's blood serum, we want them both. At this point, the White Queen spoke up. As mutants, the superhuman enhancement serum and the Hulk's blood serum had no practical use for them personally. However, the superhuman enhancement serum could be used to cultivate their subordinates and enhance the power of the Hellfire Club. If necessary, they could always give them up later. After all, both the superhuman enhancement serum and the Hulk's blood serum attracted the interest of many forces. Even if they were put up for auction, they would fetch an astronomical price. Why wouldn't the Hellfire Club want them? Fang Ye sighed inwardly. Today was really full of trouble. He could accept Hydra's ambush, and it was understandable for S.H.I.E.L.D to take advantage of the situation. But why did the Hellfire Club have to get involved? Although Fang Ye had no direct conflict with the Hellfire Club, it seemed that the Hellfire Club had been paying attention to him, otherwise, they wouldn't have arrived so timely. Suddenly, Fang Ye's expression changed because he heard a dense sound of footsteps behind him. It seemed that Hydra's reinforcements had arrived. Everyone present was not an ordinary person, and upon hearing the footsteps, they all looked in the same direction. Dozens of armed personnel appeared about 100 meters away. They were either carrying automatic rifles or shoulder-mounted individual rocket launchers. It looks like more people have arrived. The White Queen suddenly smiled, and her telepathic abilities spread out, instantly controlling the members of Hydra. Under her control, more than 30 automatic rifles and over 10 individual rocket launchers were aimed at Fang Ye, Peter Parker, and the others. The atmosphere instantly turned tense. Mr. Fang, it seems you haven't made a wise choice. The smile disappeared from the White Queen's face as she coldly spoke. Fang Ye remained calm, activating his emotional control ability. With absolute rationality, he knew that now wasn't the time to show off. Although he had injected the brain domain development drug, enhancing the right hemisphere over the left, allowing him to release instinctive combat abilities at any time, he was still no match for the Black King and White Queen. But there was absolutely no way he would hand over the Hulk's blood serum. Fang Ye only regretted that he hadn't brought Xu and the others with him. If there were 10 super soldiers by his side, the situation would be different. No matter how many calculations he had made, he hadn't anticipated that Hydra would be able to limit the spatial movement of his waistband. Daredevil, Hawkeye, will you deal with the White Queen? Spider-Man, can you help me hold off the Black King? No problem. Why should we help you? Peter Parker readily agreed. He couldn't defeat the Black King and his energy absorption ability, but he could still help by restraining him with spider webs. As for the questioning voice, it came from Daredevil. Fang Ye's expression turned cold, and a faint sneer appeared on his lips. He tightened his grip on Natasha's neck, applying more force, causing her face to turn slightly red from the lack of air. Of course, you can choose not to cooperate. Enough. Let go of Natasha. We promise to help you restrain the White Queen. Hawkeye couldn't stand by any longer. For Natasha's safety, he had to compromise. Humph. Daredevil snorted coldly but didn't say anything else. He was indeed concerned about Natasha's safety, but he was unwilling to let Hawkeye take all the credit for being the hero, making it look like he didn't care about Natasha's life or death. Mr. Fang, it seems you haven't made a wise choice. The White Queen sneered, her smile completely gone. Just as she was about to control the Hydra members and open fire on Fang Ye and the others, an unexpected event occurred. What a lively scene. Mr. Fang Ye, I hope I'm not too late. The guns in the hands of the Hydra members were pulled from their grasp by an invisible force, gathering in midair and forming a large iron ball. 10 or so figures appeared in front of the street. The leader was an elderly man dressed in a black leather jacket with a metal helmet, the renowned Magneto. Magneto, Chapter 43, Magneto, Magneto. The Black King and the White Queen's expressions tightened. It was evident that they both feared Magneto. Magneto founded the Brotherhood and led mutants and humans in their struggle. He had high prestige in the mutant society, and his strength ranked among the very top among all mutants. Moreover, Magneto had brought along several helpers. Over a dozen mutants, none of them to be trifled with, Scarlet Witch, Toad, Sabretooth, and others, all possessed considerable strength. Magneto, if you had arrived a little later, you might not have seen me, your collaborator. Seeing Magneto appear, Fang Ye smiled. However, deep in his heart, Fang Ye remained vigilant. He couldn't be sure if Magneto had come purely to help or if he had other motives, like Hellfire had. After all, one should never let down their guard. Fang Ye wasn't foolish enough to believe that Magneto had no other intentions and just came to rescue him. Furthermore, the timing of Magneto's arrival was quite coincidental. He came exactly when things were at a critical point. Magneto didn't know that within such a short time, Fang Ye had gone through a myriad of thoughts. He nodded to Fang Ye with a smile and then surveyed the surroundings. Charles, come out. I know you're here too. After Magneto spoke, a car approached from a distance and eventually stopped not far away. When the car door opened, an old man in a wheelchair, Professor X, emerged, accompanied by two individuals, Cyclops, Scott Summers, and Storm, Aurora Monroe. Eric, it's been a while. Professor X first greeted Magneto and then looked at Fang Ye. Mr. Fang Ye, it's a pleasure to see you again. Professor X, are you also going to stand in my way? Fang Ye's expression turned somewhat unsightly. He hadn't expected that the X-Mansion would also get involved at this moment. Various forces were getting involved, as if it had all been rehearsed beforehand, each arriving one after another. Fang Ye felt that things were becoming more complicated, and he even began to suspect if they were truly after just the human-enhancing potions. Professor X smiled gently and replied, Mr. Fang Ye, you've misunderstood. We're different from them. Our purpose in coming here is only to have you destroy the human-enhancing potions and the Hulk serum. I've said before that they should not exist in this world. What if I refuse? Then we'll have to go to the UI building ourselves. Fang Ye's expression turned cold. It seemed that Professor X was determined to have the human-enhancing potions and the Hulk serum destroyed. Fang Ye looked at Magneto and made a proposal. Magneto, if you help me delay them, as an exchange, I will fully support the development of the Brotherhood in the future, and I won't go back on my word. Deal. Magneto's face lit up with a smile. With Fang Ye's full support, the Brotherhood's development would advance by leaps and bounds. In fact, Magneto had considered destroying the human-enhancing potions himself because they posed too much danger to mutants. If they were destroyed, it would be for the better. However, Magneto valued Fang Ye's capabilities more. Even if the human-enhancing potions were destroyed now, there might be other similar potions in the future. Would they have to destroy each one that appeared? Then, he would have no time for anything else, as he would have to constantly be on guard against human scientists. Eric, you should know the danger the human-enhancing potions pose to mutants. They must be destroyed. I hope we can reach an agreement on this matter. Seeing Magneto agree to Fang Ye's proposal, Professor X furrowed his brow. He held out hope that he could persuade Magneto, but he knew that this old friend of his wasn't someone easily swayed. Magneto didn't answer Professor X's words but gestured for Fang Ye to leave first. Professor X sighed inwardly, realizing that Magneto had made up his mind, and there was no changing it. Fang Ye understood and glanced at Peter Parker beside him. Spider-Man, I leave this woman to you. Understood. When Peter Parker agreed, Fang Ye pushed Natasha towards him. With Natasha coming his way, Peter Parker leaped into the air with open arms as if he was about to catch her. At that moment, Fang Ye sensed danger and instantly entered his instinctual combat state. But it was too late. He only managed to avoid the webbing shot by Peter Parker, who then kicked him away. Peter Parker's strength far exceeded Natasha's. Fang Ye was sent flying 7 or 8 meters away, crashing heavily into a wall that collapsed under the impact. Seizing the opportunity, Natasha freed herself from the webbing and joined up with Daredevil and Hawkeye. Mr. Fang Ye, surprised to see us. The White Queen wore a charming smile as she stepped forward. Evidently, Peter Parker had been under her control all along. What a clever trick. Getting up from the rubble and wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, Fang Ye couldn't help but praise her. Perhaps Peter Parker had been under their control long before, but the White Queen had refrained from acting until the crucial moment, catching Fang Ye off guard. Fang Ye wasn't entirely unprepared, it was just that Peter Parker appeared natural and showed no signs of being controlled. However, this demonstrated the White Queen's incredibly powerful telepathic control. Attack? Protect Mr. Fang Ye's escape route. Perhaps Magneto had had other intentions before, but after reaching an agreement with Fang Ye, his only goal was to protect Fang Ye, because Fang Ye's ability to accumulate wealth deserved Magneto's attention. With Fang Ye's full support, Magneto believed that the Brotherhood's influence would surpass both the X-Mansion and the Hellfire Club within a few years, becoming the #1 force among mutants. Activating their powers, a grand melee ensued. Professor X sighed inwardly as he activated his telepathic power, and with the White Queen's timely assistance, nearly half of the Brotherhood's members were controlled. Seeing this, Magneto roared in anger and unleashed his mighty magnetic power. Metal objects flew everywhere, the momentum awe-inspiring, like an earthquake. Metal objects from nearby buildings were drawn out one after another, causing over a dozen buildings to collapse. The scene was grand and earth-shattering, causing Fang Ye to click his tongue in astonishment. But this wasn't the time to be amazed. Taking advantage of the chaos, Fang Ye turned around and escaped. Humph, do you think you can run? Seeing Fang Ye trying to escape, the Black King coldly snorted and chased after him with unparalleled speed. Shortly after, Daredevil, Natasha, and Cyclops all rushed towards Fang Ye. The rest of the Brotherhood stayed behind, controlled by Professor X and the White Queen, while they focused on holding off Magneto and the Brotherhood members. Fang Ye ran quickly and get into a car which was nearby and started driving it at full speed towards his research facility. The people following him also had their own vehicles. Then an intense chase started. Seeing the 3 cars tailing him closely in the rearview mirror, Fang Ye furrowed his brow. Immediately, a fierce determination filled his face. Because even if he managed to return to the UI building, with just 10 super soldiers like S.H.I.E.L.D, he feared that they wouldn't be a match for these 4. The Black King's strength alone was uncertain, and S.H.I.E.L.D and the others had just injected the serum and hadn't fully mastered their powers yet. At most, they could only stall them for a while. Fang Ye sighed inwardly, as he had already made up his mind. After returning to the UI building, he would have S.H.I.E.L.D and the others stall the 4 while he went to the research lab and injected the Hulk serum. If it didn't succeed, everything would be over. If it succeeded, Fang Ye would gain the strength to turn the tables. If he weren't forced to this point, Fang Ye wouldn't want to inject the Hulk serum at this time, as the success rate of the serum fusion was currently too low. If he just waited a little longer, he believed that Dr. Connor could definitely improve the fusion success rate. Unfortunately, those forces didn't give him any time. After injecting the Hulk serum, I don't believe I won't be able to kill you all. Fang Ye's eyes flashed with determination. At this moment, his only choice was to give it his all and leave the rest to fate. Chapter 44, Gamma Ray. After injecting the green giant serum, I don't believe I can't kill you all. Fang Ye's eyes revealed a fierce light, and a trace of cruelty appeared on his face. Picking up the cell phone in front of the driver's seat, Fang Ye dialed S.H.I.E.L.D.'s number. He wanted to inform S.H.I.E.L.D. and the others in advance to be prepared for the upcoming battle, so as not to be caught off guard. Fang Ye's phone had long been damaged. The current phone he used was left behind by the owner of the car. In fact, when he was ambushed by Hydra, Fang Ye had thought of contacting S.H.I.E.L.D. and asking him to bring people to support. However, at that time, Hydra was well prepared, and the cell phone signals were disrupted, making it impossible to contact the outside world at all. Later, Hydra attacked fiercely, and Fang Ye didn't have time to make a phone call. S.H.I.E.L.D, I am being chased right now, on my way to UI building. You should be prepared for the battle in advance. I'll be there in 5 minutes. Yes. Also, notify Dr. Stedman to be ready. I want to inject the green giant serum. Boss. S.H.I.E.L.D's tone was somewhat hesitant because he knew that the success rate of fusing with the green giant serum was very low. If it were other matters, S.H.I.E.L.D would only follow orders, but when it came to Fang Ye's safety, S.H.I.E.L.D couldn't help but worry. He wanted to persuade Fang Ye, but he was not good at words and didn't know where to start. Just follow the orders. I know what I'm doing. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D didn't say anything else. After Fang Ye hung up the phone, he quickly gathered other super warriors and sent someone to inform Dr. Stedman to be prepared. After notifying S.H.I.E.L.D, Fang Ye thought for a moment and made another call. The owner of the number was Councilman Erman Dennis. But what made Fang Ye sneer was that the call went unanswered. It seems that the Dennis family has given up on me. A cold light flickered in Fang Ye's eyes. In fact, when he was ambushed by Hydra, the police didn't arrive in time. Fang Ye was mentally prepared for that. Both Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D made their moves, and Hellfire was watching in the shadows. The 3 major forces had people in the government, and the Dennis family would not offend all 3 major forces for him. Especially Hydra, over the years, who knows how many members had infiltrated both military and political circles. Fang Ye even suspected that even the council might have some of their people. UI Fund had been established for a short time, and in terms of background, it couldn't catch up with the other forces even if it were put on fast forward. Just as Fang Ye said, the 10% share for the Dennis family was just icing on the cake. Without the 10% share, the Dennis family was still one of the top 10 families in the United States. Considering everything, it was understandable for them to abandon Fang Ye. The only thing that made Fang Ye feel fortunate was that Magneto had a favor to ask of him, or to put it another way, he still had value to Magneto. Otherwise, if the Brotherhood hadn't helped him this time, facing so many forces attacking him, Fang Ye wouldn't have had a chance to escape. I'm here. When he arrived at Wall Street, Fang Ye could already see UI building standing in the middle of the street. As the car stopped at the entrance of UI building, Fang Ye noticed that S.H.I.E.L.D and the others were already waiting armed to the teeth. Fang Ye took a glance and saw 3 cars roaring toward them, several hundred meters behind him. He couldn't help but sneer. Say hello to them. Yes. 3 super warriors picked up rocket launchers, aimed, and fired. Their movements were smooth and coordinated. 3 rockets carrying the breath of destruction shot toward the 3 approaching cars. With a loud bang, the 3 cars instantly turned into huge flames. However, the Black Bishop, Daredevil, and others were not ordinary people. Even before the rockets were fired, they had already jumped out of the cars and were not harmed. Although UI Fund was not a military arms dealer like Stark Industries, the weapons arsenal in the building was still well equipped, with almost all kinds of weapons except for missiles. You guys, stop them. Yes. The 10 super warriors were all former mercenaries and had experienced many battles. Although they hadn't fully controlled the power of the sudden increase yet, their strength was still not to be underestimated. While they might not be able to defeat the 4 people like Black Bishop one-on-one, 10 people attacking together could still hold them back for a while. Fang Ye turned around and walked into UI building, but he didn't go to the underground research facility. Instead, he went to the secret laboratory on the 30th floor of the building. When Fang Ye entered the laboratory, Dr. Stedman had been waiting for a long time. Boss, how are the preparations going? The Green Giant serum and the Gamma Ray equipment are ready. However, the success rate of fusing with the Green Giant serum is still very low. Do you want to reconsider? No need to reconsider. Let's begin now. Fang Ye took a deep breath. He understood Dr. Stedman's good intentions, but right now, he didn't have any other choices. Seeing that Fang Ye had made up his mind, Dr. Stedman stopped trying to persuade him. Boss, lie down first. I will calibrate the equipment. Fang Ye nodded and was about to take off his shirt when he suddenly remembered something and instructed Dr. Stedman. Dr. Stedman, the pants you prepared, are they ready? Full of elasticity, extra large size? They are ready. I'll go get them for you. Dr. Stedman agreed and then left the laboratory. After a while, he returned with an extra-large elastic leggings. Taking the leggings handed over by Dr. Stedman, Fang Ye first took off his shirt and outer pants, then put on the extra-large elastic leggings. Fang Ye didn't want to be turned into the naked green giant if he transformed. Let's begin. Fang Ye lay down on the experimental platform, and Dr. Stedman pressed the button, securing Fang Ye's limbs. Immediately, Dr. Stedman opened the freezer and took out a vial of Green Giant serum. The Green Giant serum was different from the Human Enhancement serum. Fang Ye had injected 9 vials of Human Enhancement serum before, while the Green Giant serum only required 1 injection. Due to the scarcity of Green Giant serum, coupled with Dr. Stedman's experiments using some, there were only 3 vials of the serum left. Wait a moment. Boss, 3 vials of Green Giant serum are left, right? Leave 1, and destroy the other 2. Also, delete all the research data related to the Green Giant serum. Boss. Dr. Stedman was in a hurry when he heard this. The Green Giant serum had cost him a lot of effort, and now he was reluctant to destroy it. There is no room for discussion on this matter. Do as I say. As long as I survive this time, I will fully support whatever research you want to do in the future. You can focus on your research for the rest of your life without any worries. This is my promise to you, and I will never break my word. Fusing with the Green Giant serum depended on Dr. Stedman, so Fang Ye naturally wanted to reassure him. Moreover, whether the fusion succeeded or not, the 2 remaining vials of Green Giant serum were no longer needed. If the fusion was successful, there would be no need for them. If it failed, Fang Ye didn't want to give a gift to S.H.I.E.L.D. or Hydra. Hearing Fang Ye's promise, Dr. Stedman was overjoyed. For a scientist, there was nothing more desirable than not having to worry about funding and being able to research whatever they wanted. Although the treatment in the laboratory was good and the funding was not restricted, research funds still required applications, and applications required research results. In other words, research funds in the laboratory were not so easily obtainable. Dr. Stedman had no doubt about Fang Ye's promise. Fang Ye's character might be difficult to evaluate, but the words he said were absolutely reliable. Thank you, boss. Just rest assured, I will do my best to help you fuse with the Green Giant serum. Then let's begin. Dr. Stedman first destroyed the 2 remaining vials of Green Giant serum in front of Fang Ye and left only the last one in the world. Then, he deleted his research data. Fang Ye nodded in satisfaction. In fact, whether the research data was deleted or not made no difference. After all, even if the data was deleted, Dr. Stedman was still alive, and without the Green Giant serum, the data was useless. However, the blood of the Hulk was something that nobody could forcibly snatch unless the Hulk himself agreed. Boss, I'm going to start. Dr. Stedman took a deep breath and began to inject the serum into Fang Ye while activating the gamma ray equipment. A green light brewed in the equipment. At the same time the serum was injected into Fang Ye's body, the gamma rays also shot into Fang Ye's forehead. Chapter 45, Transformation into the Green Giant. In the center of Wall Street, right in front of UI Building, at the intersection of crossroads. The imminent war ignited, with the roar of rockets and the screams of people seeking help echoing throughout the entire street. Boom, boom, boom. Another round of rocket launchers fired, and after a sky-shattering explosion, screams of pain could be heard from the nearby crowd. Wall Street was already crowded with people, and after several rounds of rocket launches, at least hundreds of people were accidentally injured. Help, call an ambulance, I think I've been shot. Terrorists are attacking Wall Street, call the police quickly. My leg is pinned, can someone help me? The cries for help were mixed together, but neither S.H.I.E.L.D nor Black Bishop and the other four paid attention to the civilians at the moment. As long as the casualties didn't reach thousands or tens of thousands, the four major forces could suppress the matter. At that time, they would only need to release news about a terrorist organization attacking U.E.I. building to cover it up successfully. Maybe there would even be an organization coming forward to claim responsibility for the incident. Switch to heavy machine guns. Yes. As S.H.I.E.L.D gave the order, the super warriors dropped their rocket launchers and switched to heavy machine guns. Although Black Bishop and the other four were powerful, they had suffered more or less injuries after several rounds of rocket launches. Of course, some of them were unscathed, like Daredevil, who possessed radar perception. S.H.I.E.L.D suddenly let out a muffled groan, and upon looking down, he found fresh blood slowly oozing out from his chest, staining half of his clothes red. However, due to the injection of the new human enhancement serum, S.H.I.E.L.D's physical fitness exceeded the limits of the human body. Combined with the superhuman recovery ability from the lizard genes, this level of injury was nothing to him. But the bullets used were specially designed. If not removed, the wound would slowly expand. Without even frowning, S.H.I.E.L.D directly used his hand to viciously dig out the bullet. After a while, the bleeding in his chest stopped, and the wound slowly healed. S.H.I.E.L.D looked up and saw that the person who shot him was a delicate-looking woman. This woman seemed somewhat familiar. Seeing Natasha, S.H.I.E.L.D furrowed his brows, but for a moment, he couldn't remember where he had seen her. Natasha's marksmanship was exceptional. After closing in just a moment, she had already shot 4 super warriors with her pistol. Such powerful recovery ability. Although she had shot several people, Natasha couldn't feel happy. Because the super warriors had merged with the lizard genes in their bodies, their recovery abilities were terrifying. A mere gunshot wound would not affect their combat effectiveness. However, after closing in, the super warriors lost their advantage and had to give up suppressing firepower, starting to engage in hand-to-hand combat with the four. Among the four, Scott Summers, the mutant, posed the greatest threat to the super warriors. His laser eyes were sharp and powerful. In just a short time after the battle began, 3 super warriors were seriously injured. Besides Scott Summers, Black Bishop's strength was also formidable. He could single-handedly deal with 2 super warriors. Of course, Natasha and Daredevil, working together, should not be underestimated either. Daredevil's radar perception ability was god-tier in close combat. It seemed like only he could hit you while you couldn't hit him. It was as if he could foresee attack trajectories in advance. Suddenly, S.H.I.E.L.D felt a severe pain in his chest as Scott Summers' laser eyes pierced through him. If it weren't for his powerful recovery ability, S.H.I.E.L.D would have died long ago. Even so, he completely lost his combat effectiveness. Everyone, let's temporarily cooperate and end this quickly to avoid any accidents. Scott Summers had a sense of foreboding. Fang Ye had entered U.E.I. building for some time now, and the 10 people in front of them were obviously stalling for time. To prevent accidents, Scott Summers proposed temporary cooperation among the 3 forces. Cooperation is no problem, but the Hellfire Club requires a copy of the research data on human enhancement drugs. Black Bishop didn't object to cooperation, but the objectives of the Hellfire Club and the X-Men were different. Hellfire and S.H.I.E.L.D both wanted the human enhancement drugs, while the X-Men wanted to destroy them. Our S.H.I.E.L.D's conditions are the same as Black Bishop's. Natasha, who was entangled with a super warrior, also brought up her condition at the right moment. The human enhancement drugs must be destroyed, at most leaving behind the green giant serum. This is the bottom line of our X-Men. Actually, Scott Summers also wanted to destroy the green giant serum, but to temporarily cooperate, he had to make some concessions. Compared to the human enhancement drugs, the success rate of fusing with the green giant serum was very low. Moreover, the green giant serum could not be mass-produced like the human enhancement drugs. Even if there were 1 or 2 more green giants in the world, it would not have a significant impact on mutants. All right. Both Black Bishop and Natasha agreed. As for what they truly thought in their hearts, only they knew. After the 4 of them regrouped, the pressure on the super warriors increased, and they began to retreat step by step. U.E.I. Building, 30th floor laboratory. After the green giant serum and a large amount of gamma rays were infused into his body, Fang Ye's body trembled violently, enduring unimaginable pain. In the unseen corners of Fang Ye's body, his gene chains were constantly breaking and reorganizing. Under the influence of the serum and gamma rays, they mutated and transformed into a mysterious green gene chain. The process of gene chain breakdown and recombination was a pain that outsiders couldn't imagine. Fang Ye let out a hoarse scream, struggling violently. The experimental bed creaked, clearly unable to withstand the immense force of Fang Ye. The 4 support frames underneath the ship began to twist and deform. As the serum and gamma rays continuously merged with his body, Fang Ye's body underwent changes. When the last drop of green giant serum and the last trace of gamma rays merged with his body, Fang Ye broke free from his restraints and raised his head, and his pitch-black eyes gradually turned green. Following that, his body began to swell, and his skin turned green. In an instant, his body grew taller until it reached 3 meters before stopping. This is a masterpiece of God. It's too incredible. Dr. Stedman was excited and incoherent. The robust and mighty giant body, looking ferocious and extraordinary, was filled with explosive strength, which conveyed the message that it was a great masterpiece. Dr. Stedman even forgot the danger, instinctively approaching to touch the green skin. Roar. A deafening roar shook the entire building. Fang Ye struggled violently with his limbs. The experimental bed made creaking sounds, showing that it couldn't withstand the immense power of the green giant. When the experimental ship collapsed, Dr. Stedman, who was beside it, couldn't escape in time and was instantly buried under the debris, spewing out several mouthfuls of blood. It seemed clear that he wouldn't survive. Roar. Breaking free from the restraints, Fang Ye felt an indescribable sense of release, as if there was a thorn in his heart that had finally been removed. He couldn't help but roar loudly at the sky. Looking down at Dr. Stedman, Fang Ye shook his head slightly. He could only blame Dr. Stedman's bad luck. Feeling the boundless power within his body, Fang Ye had a feeling that he could overturn the heavens with a single hand. However, in the depths of his mind, an inexplicable feeling of anger and destruction emerged. If he didn't have mental control over his powers, he might have lost his sanity due to emotional outbursts. However, now was not the time to consider these matters. S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra, Hellfire Club, X-Men. Fang Ye sneered in his heart and turned his gaze to the glass wall, revealing a cruel look. His body broke through the glass and jumped from the 30th floor. Fang Ye was going to deal with those 4 little insects. Chapter 46, Tearing Apart Daredevil? Not good. He succeeded in fusing. Scott suddenly realized something. A hint of shock flashed in his eyes, and he exclaimed in disbelief. Impossible? How could he be so lucky? The Hellfire Dark Bishop's mind and body were both shaken. He naturally understood what Scott meant by a successful fusion. However, the success rate of fusing the green giant serum was extremely low, and he couldn't believe that Fang Ye's luck would be good enough to encounter the 1 in thousands of chances. But as they looked up to the sky where the green creature was plummeting at high speed, the Dark Bishop was shocked, but had to accept the reality. Matthew, we're leaving. After the brief shock, Natasha immediately regained her composure, called out to Daredevil, and turned around to prepare to retreat. Because Natasha knew very well how terrifying the strength of the green giant was. In the S.H.I.E.L.D database, there was an evaluation of the green giant, and his strength was absolutely top-notch. If Fang Ye successfully fused with the green giant serum, they wouldn't stand a chance against him, not even by a hair's breadth. Boom. A deafening sound, the ground trembled slightly as if there was an earthquake. Natasha halted her steps, her face showing astonishment, as she saw a huge crater suddenly formed on the road ahead. Kacha. A massive green fist extended from the crater, and the concrete on its fist was crushed by the overwhelming force. Roar. A green giant over 3 meters tall slowly crawled out of the crater. The green giant's muscular body was full of explosive power, his skin seemed to be coated with a green glow, and on his fierce and ferocious face, a pair of angry and destructive green eyes made the 4 of them feel chills deep down. Half a year ago, perhaps none of them knew what the green giant was. But after the Hulk clashed with the military several times, displaying his overwhelming power, he immediately attracted the attention of various forces. Just thinking about the terrifying strength of the green giant, how could they not be frightened? Roar. He roared again at the 4 of them. Fang Ye's feet pushed off the ground, showing his terrifying jumping ability. He shot out like a cannonball, creating a series of sonic booms as his body brushed through the air. ZZZT, ZZZT. Scott was the fastest to react and the only one among them with long-range attack capabilities. His eyes glowed with a red light, and 2 scorching laser beams shot out from his eyes, tearing through the air and hitting Fang Ye's chest in an instant. Roar. However, could the green giant's defense be broken by mere laser eyes? Fang Ye only felt a slight burning sensation, and couldn't help but let out a roar of anger. But afterwards, he didn't feel any discomfort at all. Impossible. Scott was even more shocked. It was the first time he encountered someone who could ignore his laser eyes. Even Magneto and Professor X might be able to defeat him, but they wouldn't be able to completely ignore his laser eyes like Fang Ye did. This shock was unparalleled for Scott. Run. Natasha, Daredevil, and the Dark Bishop were all shocked. Who would dare to confront Fang Ye head-on? Seeing Scott's laser eyes, which were so sharp and yet ineffective against Fang Ye, they were all too frightened to even scratch an itch. Scott was amazed by the situation, but escaping was the top priority. The four of them scattered and fled in different directions. Hey, big guy, over here. Daredevil, relying on his radar senses, actually tried to attract Fang Ye's attention, giving the other three time to escape. Fang Ye let out a cold snort. Did he think he was the brainless Hulk? After transforming into the Green Giant, because of the change in his throat structure, speaking was extremely difficult for him. However, it didn't mean that Fang Ye couldn't speak. It was just that when he spoke, his throat felt like it was being scraped by a knife, so he didn't want to do it unless necessary. Roar. With a low roar, Fang Ye bounced into the air, swiftly chasing after Daredevil. Daredevil's radar sense was indeed extraordinary, and even with Fang Ye activating his right brain combat mode, he still couldn't land a hit on him. Every time Fang Ye threw a punch, Daredevil had already dodged to the side, seemingly able to predict the trajectory of Fang Ye's punches in advance. However, no matter how strong one's power was, if they couldn't hit their opponent, it was all in vain. Roar. Fang Ye suddenly stopped his attack and let out a powerful roar at Daredevil. Invisible sound waves spread out, causing the leaves of the trees on both sides of the street to tremble. Daredevil's expression faltered, as if he suddenly malfunctioned. Blood dripped from his eardrums apparently ruptured by Fang Ye's roar. While Daredevil's close combat skills were formidable, Fang Ye knew one fatal flaw in his abilities: he was extremely susceptible to having his eardrums shattered by loud noises, which left him temporarily immobilized. No! A cry of despair suddenly came from afar. It was Natasha, who hadn't run far and was still worried about Daredevil's safety. She couldn't help but look back and witnessed a heart-wrenching scene. Fang Ye's roar had shattered Daredevil's eardrums, and taking advantage of Daredevil's temporary immobilization, he rushed forward and grabbed Daredevil's legs. Then, like picking up a ragdoll from the ground, he lifted Daredevil high overhead and tore him apart with a savage and ferocious jerk. Blood spewed out several meters away, and a once great superhero's life came to an end. The violent and bloody scene would remain etched in Natasha's mind forever. She wanted to turn around and fight Fang Ye with all her might to avenge Daredevil, but her reason told her that she should escape now. In the end, Natasha chose to flee for her life. She was not an impulsive person, and after the initial surge of emotions, her hatred was deeply buried in her heart. Heh, now you want to run? Isn't it a bit too late? After tearing apart Daredevil, Fang Ye turned to look at the other three. He noticed that Natasha and Scott had each found a vehicle, and their destination was surprisingly the area where Hydra had ambushed Fang Ye not long ago. Fang Ye understood their intentions, but did they think they could save their lives by running to Professor X and the White Queen? Fang Ye let out a cold laugh, but the smile on his face looked particularly ferocious at this moment. He kicked off with his feet and shot up, grabbing the window ledge, and then exerting force to jump to the opposite building. In this way, he used the buildings on both sides of the street to continuously gain momentum, leaping and chasing after them, with a speed that was not slower than the cars they were driving. Chapter 47, Hulk arrives. Not good. He caught up. Through the rearview mirror of the car, Scott saw Fang Ye continuously jumping and chasing after them at high speed, making Scott quite fearful. Scott could swear that in his entire life, he had never been so afraid of a person. Fang Ye was also the first person in his life who could ignore his laser eyes. Thinking of the tragic end of Daredevil and the Black Bishop before they died, Scott couldn't help but shiver. It was hard to imagine what fate awaited him if Fang Ye caught up to them. Fang Ye, I will make you pay for this. Natasha also noticed Fang Ye, her teeth clenched, her beautiful eyes filled with hatred and fear. Because of Daredevil's death, Natasha had a deep-rooted hatred for Fang Ye. However, considering Fang Ye's terrifying power, she couldn't help but feel a little afraid. Under the fear of being caught by Fang Ye, the two of them immediately stepped on the accelerator to the maximum. Unfortunately, the car's performance was terrible, and its speed couldn't increase significantly. It was almost impossible to shake off Fang Ye. Boom! Every time Fang Ye jumped, he violently broke through the walls, leaving behind enormous craters and cracks like spider webs that spread around as he propelled himself through squat jumps. Fang Ye's every jump was so impactful that it attracted the attention of many pedestrians. When they saw Fang Ye, they were stunned. Oh my god, what is that thing? The Hulk? Damn, how did he come to Wall Street? Oh no, the Hulk is here, let's run. The Hulk had gained some fame after a few reports, and many people in the US knew about him. It was understandable for people to mistake Fang Ye as the Hulk since he had green skin. If Fang Ye knew about this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. but being mistaken for the Hulk was fine with him. After all, he was happy to let someone else take the blame. After chasing out of Wall Street, there were no tall buildings on both sides of the street, so Fang Ye had to land, but his running speed was not slow. To obstruct Scott and Natasha, Fang Ye casually grabbed a car and threw it with a little force, sending it flying. Boom! The car was thrown hundreds of meters away, falling from the sky above the two. However, both of them were not ordinary people and reacted quickly, evading the flying car in advance. Seeing that the flying car didn't hit them, Fang Ye couldn't help but feel angry. But even if they managed to reach Professor X and the White Queen, could they really save you? Fang Ye sneered in his heart. Professor X and the White Queen might be powerful, but he had the perfect counter against them. Not to mention Fang Ye's own abilities, his mental shield provided defense against any mental attacks. Just the Hulk itself possessed a high resistance to mental attacks. Professor X and the White Queen would be helpless against Fang Ye. In terms of speed, Professor X sat in a wheelchair, and the White Queen's speed was average. In terms of strength and physique, they were only slightly stronger than ordinary people. Their only noteworthy ability, the telepathic sense, was useless against Fang Ye's transformed state. For others, Professor X and the White Queen might be formidable characters, but for Fang Ye, they were roles that could be easily dealt with. S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters. The meeting room was filled with people, including Director Nick Fury, along with many senior agents. The most surprising thing was the person sitting at the back of the meeting table, who had been absent for a long time, Dr. Bruce Banner. On the large screen at the front of the meeting room, a video was playing. It showed Fang Ye descending from the sky, tearing apart Daredevil, killing the Black Bishop, causing wanton destruction of public buildings, and pursuing S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Natasha and X-Men's Scott. The angle of the video seemed to be taken from a satellite. Taking a deep breath, Nick Fury found it hard to accept the fact that the conflict between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the U.S. Foundation had escalated to this point. They paid such a huge price, yet they failed to obtain the human enhancement serum, and Daredevil died tragically at the hands of Fang Ye. Moreover, they had to be prepared for Fang Ye's possible retaliatory attacks in the future. Thinking of Fang Ye successfully merging with the Hulk's blood serum and gaining the ability to transform into the Hulk, Nick Fury's brow furrowed deeply. After some contemplation, Nick Fury raised his head and looked at Dr. Bruce Banner. Dr. Banner, in his late 30s, had a gentle and scholarly appearance with glasses, but who could imagine that this seemingly gentle guy would become a terrifying presence when enraged? Dr. Banner, do you have any suggestions? Me? What can I suggest? Dr. Banner pushed his glasses and spoke in an incredibly mild tone. His demeanor made Nick Fury, who was already feeling unhappy, even more frustrated. Because, in this incident, Dr. Banner couldn't escape responsibility. But Nick Fury couldn't afford to be too harsh. If he managed to provoke Dr. Banner into anger, it would ultimately be S.H.I.E.L.D. that would suffer. After all, inviting Dr. Banner to S.H.I.E.L.D. was a huge risk since no one knew when he might transform into the Hulk. Taking a deep breath, Nick Fury suppressed his anger and spoke in a gentle tone. Dr. Banner, you bear a significant responsibility for today's disaster. If it weren't for your serum accidentally falling into Fang Ye's hands, how could he have become the Hulk? No, it wasn't an accident. My serum was stolen. He's just a thief. Dr. Banner was mild-mannered and rarely held grudges against people, but he held a deep hatred for Fang Ye, who had stolen his serum. However, due to this incident, Dr. Banner had already decided that he would never let the serum fall into the wrong hands for any reason in the future. This sudden decision by Dr. Banner caused those who had plans to steal the Hulk serum to be in great trouble. Dr. Banner, please don't get upset. Nick Fury's forehead was sweating, but he couldn't afford to wipe it off. He hurriedly tried to placate Dr. Banner. Inviting Dr. Banner to S.H.I.E.L.D. was something Nick Fury insisted on, and if Dr. Banner lost control and destroyed the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, Nick Fury would be held responsible for the consequences. Dr. Banner, we need you to make a trip. Only you can deal with Fang Ye. But, if the Hulk appears, there are too many uncontrollable factors. I'm afraid. Dr. Banner hesitated because once the Hulk appeared, he would lose control. Nick Fury felt somewhat helpless and sighed, is there any other way now? Are we going to watch Fang Ye wreak havoc and chase down S.H.I.E.L.D. senior agents? Fine. Dr. Banner finally relented. He was a responsible person. In the original work, Bruce Banner transformed into the Hulk because of his serum and became a ruthless killer. At that time, Dr. Banner had injected himself with the antidote but still took the risk of jumping from a 3,000-meter high plane to stop the Hulk. This showed Dr. Banner's character. Although he wasn't a saint, he was willing to take responsibility for accidents caused by his own actions. Besides, Dr. Banner was quite disgusted with Fang Ye and had long wanted to teach him a lesson. Prepare a fighter jet, and send Dr. Banner over immediately. Yes. Seeing Dr. Banner's agreement, Nick Fury breathed a sigh of relief. Agent Coulson stood up and walked to Dr. Banner's side, saying, Dr. Banner, Natasha has made significant contributions to the United States. Her safety is now in your hands. Don't worry, I won't let him hurt anyone else. Dr. Banner promised. Agent Coulson nodded, and after a while, another agent walked in. Director, the fighter jet is ready. Dr. Banner, let's go. Okay. Dr. Banner responded and followed the agent out. To send Dr. Banner over as soon as possible, S.H.I.E.L.D. even used a fighter jet, indicating how urgent the situation was. Watching Dr. Banner's departing figure, Agent Coulson couldn't help but sigh in his heart. We have done everything we can. Now, I just hope that you, Natasha, can hold on for a little longer. Good luck. Chapter 48, Removing the Grass by its Roots. Boom, boom, boom. On the streets of New York, a massive green figure was chasing two cars at high speed. Because of his overwhelming strength, every time Fang Ye landed, the cement road cracked and spread in all directions. The road on Riel Street was completely destroyed under his continuous running. Fang Ye's green eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared fiercely at the two cars. Occasionally, there were vehicles blocking the way, but Fang Ye casually pushed them aside. As for the fate of the people inside the cars, he couldn't care less. Roar. Ignoring the screams and cries of help from the onlookers, Fang Ye was gradually catching up with the two cars. Natasha's expression showed fear when she noticed Fang Ye quickly approaching. Scott's driving skills might not be as good as Natasha's, but the stolen cars he took were better in terms of performance. So, all the way, Scott was leading the race. If Fang Ye caught up, the first unlucky one would undoubtedly be Natasha. With fear hidden in her eyes, Natasha suddenly showed a resolute look. She took out her gun, opened the car window, and started shooting continuously. 5 car tires burst, causing the cars to lose control and collide with Fang Ye. What a ruthless woman. Fang Ye thought to himself. To save her life, she would do anything. But the agents from the government's organization, S.H.I.E.L.D, didn't care about the lives of civilians. Did they expect Fang Ye to be a hero and save people in distress? What a joke. Among the various forces, Fang Ye disliked S.H.I.E.L.D the most. They were a group of people who acted under the banner of justice but did all kinds of dirty work, even resorting to kidnapping and human experimentation to obtain superhuman enhancement drugs. Moreover, Natasha herself had ambiguous relationships with many superheroes. According to the original storyline, many of those superheroes later joined the Avengers. Was Natasha really a femme fatale? Fang Ye doubted it. If it had nothing to do with Nick Fury, would Fang Ye believe it? It was just a beauty trap. In Chinese history, it had been used over and over again. Roar. Seeing 5 out-of-control cars rushing towards him, Fang Ye let out a low roar. Without dodging, he stumped on one of the car hoods. The car, which was in extreme motion, turned into an extreme stillness, and under the terrifying reactive force, it flipped into the air. In midair, Fang Ye jumped and grabbed a corner of the car's body. He exerted force and swung the car in midair, sending it flying towards Natasha. Boom. Although Natasha managed to dodge in time, she was still affected by the shockwave, and the car swayed dangerously, almost losing control. Fang Ye's pause gave Natasha some time to recover. After chasing and evading for a few minutes, they finally arrived at the area where Hydra had ambushed Fang Ye not long ago. Unbeknownst to Fang Ye, the bodies of Hydra members were lying in piles, killed by Deadpool and the Winter Soldier, as evidenced by the sharp blade wounds. After a while, they finally reached the area where the Brotherhood, the Hellfire Club, and the X-Men were fighting. The battle in the area was intense. Professor X and the White Queen were teaming up, with Hawkeye, Spider-Man, and others assisting. The Brotherhood was retreating step by step, and Magneto was almost unable to lift his head due to the combined pressure of the two. Roar. Suddenly, a furious and earth-shaking roar came from the distance, shaking everyone on the battlefield. Professor X turned his head and couldn't help but feel shocked. In the distance, there was a giant over 3 meters tall, with green skin, only wearing a pair of large pants, rushing and chasing after 2 cars. It's the Hulk? But it seems not. It's Fang Ye. I didn't expect him to successfully fuse with the Hulk's serum. Now we're in trouble. Looking at the somewhat familiar face, the White Queen furrowed her eyebrows. Although Fang Ye had transformed into the Hulk, his appearance was somewhat different. It was not easy to tell from a distance, but it became apparent when he got closer. Professor X also frowned because the Hulk was a perfect counter to him, and his psychic abilities were ineffective against the Hulk. Moreover, Fang Ye possessed psychic abilities himself, including mental shielding. If Fang Ye were in his normal state and using the brainwave amplifier, Professor X might have a chance to break through his mental shielding. But in the Hulk state, Professor X could only look on helplessly. Is it Mr. Fang Ye? Magneto couldn't help but smile slightly. With Fang Ye joining the battle, he could finally vent his anger. They had been suppressed by the combined forces of Professor X and the White Queen until now, and Magneto had been holding back his anger. Especially since the two had controlled many of his subordinates, he couldn't retaliate with full force. How could Magneto not feel aggrieved? However, Magneto suddenly thought of a problem. According to the Brotherhood's analysis, it seemed that the Hulk didn't distinguish between friend or foe. Magneto suddenly felt a bit vexed. Most of the people here were from the Brotherhood. If they were indiscriminately slaughtered by Fang Ye, how many would be left in the end? At this moment, Natasha and Scott finally arrived and rushed into the crowd after getting off the car. Professor, save me. Scott looked terrified, and Natasha's face was pale, her forehead covered in cold sweat. They had both experienced numerous scares all the way. After all, they were being chased by a violent maniac, and every now and then, he would catch up and give them a scare. Both of them had used all means to evade and resolve the situation, but they were still in constant danger. Despite having exceptional mental resilience, the repeated shocks still left a mark on them. Roar! Fang Ye jumped into the crowd, and with a flick of his huge palm, the members of the Brotherhood were sent flying like a bunch of straws. However, Fang Ye didn't kill them. After all, he still had a cooperative relationship with Magneto. Scott was obviously stunned, standing still dumbfounded. When Fang Ye approached, he realized that it was too late to escape. Zing zing. With a determined look on his face, Scott activated his optic blasts at full power. 2 red laser beams hit Fang Ye's chest. Fang Ye only felt a slight pain and slowed down for a moment. Then, with a fierce and low roar, he swung his huge palm towards Scott's head. Struggling on the brink of death, Fang Ye sneered in his heart. Professor X's threat was too great. Although Fang Ye wasn't afraid of him, the people around him were. Since these factions had already offended him, he would now take the opportunity to weaken their strength. Not only would Professor X die, but the White Queen and others would also have to die. Apart from the Brotherhood and Spider-Man, Fang Ye had no intention of sparing anyone on the scene. Show mercy. Magneto's voice once again sounded, and his tone was obviously urgent. Although he and Professor X disagreed in ideology, they were also friends. Naturally, Magneto couldn't just watch Professor X perish here. But would Fang Ye listen to him? Chapter 49, Slapping to Death. Show mercy. Magneto called out again, his tone becoming noticeably urgent. But would Fang Ye listen to him? Of course not. Fang Ye remained unaffected, his fist aimed at Professor X, and the speed did not diminish. The fierce and overbearing fist wind could be felt even 5 or 6 meters away, showing how terrifying the power within Fang Ye's punch was. Professor X wouldn't sit idly by, a mighty psychic force spread out, but in an instant, he helplessly discovered that he was like a yellow weasel biting a turtle and couldn't find a way to attack. Facing the transformed green giant Fang Ye, his psychic abilities were utterly ineffective. Seeking death. Fang Ye let out a roar of anger and swung his fist towards Professor X, who was just a step away, with a slightly changed expression. Professor X's psychic power was not entirely useless. However, due to the Hulk's strong psychic defense, its effectiveness was reduced to the extreme, and it couldn't affect Fang Ye in the slightest. It only made Fang Ye feel a slight mental intrusion, causing a slight headache in his mind, similar to how an ordinary person would feel if their finger was pricked by a needle. With a thought, Fang Ye activated his mental shielding ability, dispersing the intrusion instantly. With double defenses, Fang Ye's mental defense was probably unrivaled in the Marvel world. Of course, that was only true for Earth. Stand up. Seeing Fang Ye still determined to kill Professor X, Magneto couldn't help but roar in anger. His terrifying magnetic force was activated, and Professor X's wheelchair was pulled by the magnetic force, quickly escaping Fang Ye's attack range. At the same time, under Magneto's control, all the nearby metals merged into a large iron ball, with a diameter of more than 10 meters. Boosted by Earth's gravity, the iron ball whistled and smashed towards Fang Ye. Roar. Seeing his prey being saved, Fang Ye let out an angry roar and turned his cold green eyes towards Magneto. His eyes lacked any emotional color but were filled with anger, destruction, killing intent, and various other negative emotions. Even Magneto couldn't help but shudder inwardly upon seeing that terrifying gaze. Magneto could swear that it was the most dreadful look he had ever seen. Roar. Fang Ye looked up and let out a long howl to the sky. His black hair danced wildly, and his aura was like a rainbow. He didn't avoid or dodge, he stood in place and caught the huge iron ball that was descending upon him. The scene was undoubtedly extremely shocking. At least everyone present was stunned by the spectacle. Natasha seemed to have forgotten to run away, her beautiful eyes filled with astonishment. She wasn't astonished by Fang Ye's immense power, but rather by the overwhelming violence in the scene. Seeing the situation wasn't favorable, the White Queen, who had been preparing to leave quietly, also stopped in her tracks. She opened her red lips, her beautiful eyes filled with disbelief. She had been in contact with Fang Ye on numerous occasions, and the impression he had given her was that of a refined gentleman who handled everything with ease, exuding an air of sophistication. But at this moment, she couldn't associate the violent and domineering green giant before her with that refined and elegant gentleman. The iron ball, with a diameter of more than 10 meters, was lifted by Fang Ye without any effort. In the astonished gazes of the crowd, accompanied by Fang Ye's roar, the iron ball was directly smashed towards Magneto. Drink. Magneto roared and fully activated his magnetic force. The iron ball quickly disintegrated, and by the time it reached the Brotherhood and others, it had disappeared without a trace, leaving only individual pieces of metal floating still in midair. However, Fang Ye's power in that throw wasn't so easily dissipated. Although Magneto had dispersed the iron ball, the sweat on his forehead indicated that he hadn't been as relaxed as he appeared. Magneto, are you really going to stop me from killing? Staring coldly at Magneto, Fang Ye finally spoke after transforming into the green giant. The scene fell silent, everyone was shocked and looked at Fang Ye with disbelief. Initially, they all believed that after transforming into the green giant, Fang Ye should be as mindless as the Hulk. But no one had expected Fang Ye to suddenly speak. Doesn't this mean that Fang Ye, in his green giant state, still retained his sanity? The thought left everyone taking in a cold breath. Compared to the mindless Hulk, a green giant with a clear mind was even more terrifying, especially when it was Fang Ye, an extraordinarily intelligent person who knew how to make the best use of his power. Fang Ye and Magneto's relationship was merely one of mutual benefit. It was impossible for them to have a close relationship. Fang Ye didn't trust Magneto and had never thought of targeting the UI Foundation. But if the UI Foundation were to lose Fang Ye, would it still be the UI Foundation? Perhaps in just a few years, one of the world's top 10 foundations would become a third-rate foundation. Maybe it was for this reason that Magneto had refrained from acting all this time. Magneto looked at Fang Ye, and for a rare moment, he fell silent. Fang Ye was undoubtedly the best ally. With his full support, the Brotherhood could become the #1 force in the mutant society in a short few years. But Magneto glanced at Professor X sitting beside him and couldn't help but sigh inwardly. They were playmates and brothers in their early years, but now they were rivals and friends. Magneto had always been ruthless, but he found that he couldn't bring himself to watch Professor X perish. It seems you have made your decision. I only hope you won't regret it. As Fang Ye finished speaking, he had already rushed towards the nearby White Queen. With Magneto protecting Professor X, killing him would take time. Fang Ye decided to deal with the others first before having a proper chat with Magneto using his fists. Damn it! The White Queen was startled as she saw Fang Ye approaching and instinctively used her psychic power. But just like with Professor X, she found her psychic power had no effect on Fang Ye. Panicked and at a loss, she was slapped to death by Fang Ye. After the White Queen died, the people she had controlled also regained their consciousness, including Spider-Man. After Peter Parker regained his senses, his eyes were filled with confusion. He clearly didn't understand what had happened. Run. Seeing Fang Ye slapping the White Queen to death, Natasha and Hawkeye's hearts trembled. They didn't want to become the next targets to be slapped to death by Fang Ye. Can you escape? Fang Ye sneered inwardly, stamped his foot on the ground, and in an instant, he was above the heads of Natasha and Hawkeye. He swung a punch towards the two of them below. In an instant, Fang Ye felt a sudden sensation. He looked up in midair and saw a massive green creature descending, accompanied by a deafening roar. Hulk. At the sight of the green giant Hulk, Fang Ye immediately recognized him because, besides himself, the only other green giant in this world was the Hulk. Fang Ye was only slightly stunned, but his fist didn't slow down. It still struck Natasha and Hawkeye. Bang! Seeing Fang Ye's fist approaching, Hawkeye gritted his teeth and stood in front of Natasha. Unfortunately, Fang Ye's strength was immense, and with a single punch, he sent Hawkeye flying. Colliding with Natasha behind him, they were like a pair of sugar-coated haws, thrown dozens of meters away, slamming into the wall of a nearby building. Fang Ye didn't continue the pursuit. With a single punch, the two were either dead or severely injured. The crucial thing now was that the Hulk's fist was coming. Boom! Fang Ye didn't avoid or evade, nor did he have time to do so. He threw a punch from below, and with a thunderous bang, it collided with the Hulk's fist. An invisible vortex seemed to hang around, swirling up a cloud of dust that covered the sky. The sky instantly darkened. Fang Ye felt a tremendous force coming at him, and his body involuntarily sank, sinking half of his body into the ground. After all, Fang Ye had thrown his punch from a disadvantageous position from below. However, after the collision, Fang Ye also gauged the approximate strength of the Hulk. He should be on par with himself. Chapter 50. Killing Professor X. Hulk attacks. After landing, the Hulk roared and once again threw a punch. The Hulk's intelligence was very low, only able to distinguish between good and bad, much like a 3- or 4-year-old child. Although he didn't recognize Fang Ye, he instinctively felt that he disliked the person before him. He wanted to defeat him. "Don't think I'm afraid of you," Fang Ye roared in his heart. His body suddenly bounced, leaping up to launch a punch towards the Hulk. After colliding with the Hulk's fist, Fang Ye had already determined that the Hulk's strength was roughly equal to his own. Sometimes, pirated goods might not be inferior to the original. Boom! The collision of absolute power caused the air to vibrate, and an invisible energy spread in all directions. The ground under their feet couldn't bear the force and collapsed with cracks radiating in all directions. Many nearby buildings collapsed due to the shockwaves. The onlookers, including Magneto and others, had their expressions slightly changed. They felt a gust of wind approaching, and the ground was shaking slightly. Several heavily injured mutants fell to the ground unable to stand. "Let's go." Magneto's face changed, and the aftermath of the two violent fighters was too great. Moreover, all the Brotherhood members were injured, so he promptly ordered them to retreat from the area. Before leaving, Magneto didn't forget to take Professor X with him. "Should I go down and stop them?" On the rooftop of a building in the district, Peter Parker, the Spider-Man, looked down below with a tangled expression. The two violent giants, clad only in shorts, were fighting madly, and the surrounding buildings collapsed in large numbers. Although Peter Parker wanted to intervene, he looked at his slender arms and legs and realized that he couldn't even compare to their strength. It was the first time Peter Parker felt that his power seemed insufficient. He needed to become even stronger? Damn it! Although Fang Ye was engaged in a battle with the Hulk, he had been paying attention to Magneto's movements. Seeing Magneto preparing to leave with Professor X, Fang Ye couldn't help but frown and curse inwardly. However, he was currently entangled with the Hulk and couldn't free himself to intervene. Fang Ye sighed inwardly, aware that letting the tiger return to the mountain would bring endless trouble. He wouldn't sleep peacefully as long as Professor X lived. In Fang Ye's eyes, Professor X was too threatening. He was far beyond the reach of S.H.I.E.L.D, which was still in its infancy. Professor X, with his powerful psychic abilities and the cerebro amplifier, could practically snatch people's lives from thousands of miles away. Such a person had to be eliminated. Even the cerebro amplifier was something Fang Ye would consider destroying. "I'll go all out. Professor X must die." Seeing Magneto and others gradually disappear, Fang Ye made up his mind. Even if he was punched away by the Hulk, Fang Ye shook off the entanglement and jumped up, chasing after Magneto and the others. Dash roar! The Hulk let out a furious roar and quickly caught up with Fang Ye. In the Hulk's eyes, Fang Ye was his prey, and when he saw his prey running away, he naturally chased after him. Fang Ye's speed was extremely fast, and with the members of the Brotherhood, apart from Magneto, who was now seriously injured, they were all slowed down, making it easy for Fang Ye to catch up. After catching up with the Brotherhood, Fang Ye didn't waste time arguing with Magneto. He directly attacked with a punch towards Professor X. "Professor X, he must kill him." "Fang Ye." Magneto's face turned angry. He had been tolerating Fang Ye all along because he didn't want to completely break their relationship. But Fang Ye, again and again, wanted to kill Professor X. Even after they had chosen to retreat, Fang Ye still wouldn't spare Professor X. How could Magneto not be angry? With a thought, Magneto activated his massive magnetic force, and nearby metal objects were drawn and gathered by the invisible force. However, Fang Ye's desire to kill Professor X was stronger than Magneto had imagined. Because Fang Ye was a surprise attack, Magneto needed time to gather the metal. He wanted to stop Fang Ye, but Fang Ye didn't care about Magneto's attack. He would rather endure a blow from Magneto than miss the opportunity to kill Professor X with a single punch. Boom! Professor X's physical condition was only slightly better than an ordinary person's. Coupled with his inability to move his legs and sitting in a wheelchair, his psychic abilities were ineffective against Fang Ye. Naturally, he had no resistance at all. As Fang Ye smashed Professor X, wheelchair and all, with a single punch, Magneto's controlled metal also heavily struck Fang Ye's back. The immense force sent Fang Ye flying for hundreds of meters, crashing into more than a dozen buildings before stopping. Roar! At this moment, the Hulk also arrived. Magneto's expression was complex as he looked at Professor X's lifeless body. He sighed inwardly, not because he didn't want to save him, but because he had already done his best. Magneto's feelings were indeed complicated because with Professor X dead, he had the opportunity to recruit the mutants from the Xavier Institute. Even if he couldn't fully control all of them, as long as he could recruit a few, it would be enough. Professor X's death was beneficial and had no disadvantages for the Brotherhood. So now, Magneto's heart was indeed very complex, and he even felt a slight relief. In the future, the Mutant Society will have only one voice. Not wanting to confront the Hulk, Magneto left with the Brotherhood. The Hulk seemed to have eyes only for Fang Ye and didn't pay attention to Magneto and the others in the distance. He ran towards Fang Ye, who was buried in the rubble. After crawling out of the ruins, Fang Ye felt a slight pain in his back and frowned. But at this moment, the Hulk had arrived, and Fang Ye didn't have time to consider other things. He roared and rushed to meet him. Hulk attacks. The Hulk's terrifying and fierce face showed a tremendous force as he threw a punch at Fang Ye. Seeing the Hulk's fist approaching, Fang Ye instinctively grabbed it and used a bit of force to knee him hard in the stomach, throwing him away. The Hulk was thrown hundreds of meters away, smashing into 6 or 7 buildings in succession before stopping. Dash roar. Suddenly leaping out of the ruins, the Hulk roared to the sky and rushed towards Fang Ye again. At first, relying on his instinct to fight, Fang Ye did have the upper hand, but as the Hulk's strength increased, Fang Ye was no longer at an advantage. 2 green giants wrestled together, causing rocks to fly and buildings to collapse wherever they went. In just a short moment, the entire district was mostly destroyed. Such destructive power was truly terrifying. Damn, how could this happen? In the meeting hall of S.H.I.E.L.D, Nick Fury and a group of high-ranking agents were watching the live video through satellites. Seeing the 2 green giants wrestle together, destroying most of the district in a short time, causing thousands of civilians to die, Nick Fury's face turned green. Nick Fury couldn't say that he didn't regret it, that was impossible. Dash roar. As time passed, the Hulk's strength grew stronger and stronger. At this point, Fang Ye was already at a disadvantage. Infinite strength. The angrier the Hulk got, the stronger his power became. Fang Ye didn't know if he also possessed the power of infinite anger. He had always kept his emotional control ability activated since he didn't want to lose his sanity. But now, he had no choice but to release his anger. Dash roar. After releasing his emotional control ability, Fang Ye's consciousness was instantly submerged by a massive wave of anger, and he lost consciousness in an instant. A/N, consider giving some power stones for this novel. Your support is my motivation. Chapter 51, Aftermath. When Fang Ye's consciousness regained clarity, he found himself lying in his familiar bedroom. Jennifer sat at the bedside, carefully taking care of Fang Ye. Seeing Fang Ye open his eyes and wake up, a hint of joy appeared on her beautiful face. Boss, you're awake. Jennifer. Fang Ye's tone carried a hint of confusion. His memory still lingered at the moment when his consciousness was engulfed by the release of anger. Back then, being suppressed by the Hulk, Fang Ye had to release his anger in the hope of gaining infinite power. After that, he had no memory. Boss, take a look at this. Jennifer seemed prepared as she walked to a nearby table and picked up a newspaper. Fang Ye got up and disembarked from the boat, moving his body to check for injuries. Feeling no major problems, he took the newspaper from Jennifer and sat on the nearby sofa, starting to read. I've been unconscious for a whole day. After reading the newspaper, Fang Ye learned the general situation of what had happened. The newspaper only reported on the Green Giants' battle that had destroyed 3 blocks, leaving nearly 10,000 civilians dead or injured, demanding accountability from the government. As for the final outcome of the battle, Fang Ye had no memory of it, and the newspaper did not report it either. However, it did mention that the United States military intervened at the end to lure the 2 irrational Green Giants out of New York City. Otherwise, instead of 3 blocks being destroyed, the entire New York City would have suffered. In fact, after Fang Ye lost consciousness, S.H.I.E.L.D intervened, seemingly wanting to take Fang Ye away. Unfortunately, under the leadership of Shu Long and 10 super soldiers wearing green demon suits and riding flying boards, S.H.I.E.L.D had no choice but to compromise. I have to thank them sometime. I imagine they put in a lot of effort to handle this situation. Fang Ye thought of the 2 people and murmured. The UEI Foundation had 3 gold members, and Congressman Dennis was one of them. The information about the gold members was not recorded in the database, so even Jennifer didn't know about them, only aware that the UEI Foundation had 3 gold members. It could be said that within the UEI Foundation, the 3 gold members were extremely mysterious. Only Fang Ye knew their information, as the records of the 3 gold members were only stored in his memory. Fang Ye could imagine that despite the destruction of 3 blocks and the near 10,000 casualties, he managed to sit comfortably on the sofa, sipping coffee. Those 2 members probably played a significant role in the situation. The UEI Foundation had developed to its present state with thousands of ordinary members and hundreds of silver members. Every one of them was a billionaire or a political figure, forming an unimaginable force when united together. If S.H.I.E.L.D wanted to catch Fang Ye, or if the military wanted to take action against him, the forces behind him would never agree. Jennifer, has Deadpool returned? He's back. Do you want to see him? Fang Ye nodded, and Jennifer quickly made a call to notify Deadpool to come over. In a moment, Deadpool's figure appeared in the bedroom. Seeing Deadpool, Fang Ye was immediately filled with anger. The boss was being hunted, yet this guy had the audacity to play hide-and-seek. Wilson, you're losing your bonuses for 3 years. Oh no, boss, you can't do this. Deadpool immediately let out a pitiful wail. Having his rewards withheld for 3 years was a significant event for Deadpool. Seeing that Fang Ye was unmoved, Deadpool suddenly had an idea. His figure disappeared once more, and when he reappeared, he was holding a briefcase. What's this? Boss, this is it, the space teleportation restriction belt. It took me a lot of effort to get this after taking down the Winter Soldier. Fang Ye suddenly became interested. This was the reason he sought out Deadpool. Because Fang Ye planned to make space teleportation pants, but Hydra had a means of restricting space teleportation. This fact made Fang Ye uneasy, so he wanted to inquire about the situation from Deadpool. But he didn't expect Deadpool to be so efficient. Not only did he take down the Winter Soldier, but he also managed to snatch the device that restricted space teleportation. This thing should be handed over. I won't deduct any bonuses. Okay. Deadpool was extremely reluctant. After all, this device was undoubtedly a treasure. Although he didn't know if it was unique, it was undoubtedly very rare. Fang Ye opened the briefcase and found a silver instrument inside, about the size of a teacup lid. In the center of the silver device, there was a black meteorite embedded. The silver instrument operated in a way that Fang Ye couldn't understand, emitting a strange magnetic field. It was because of this magnetic field that the space teleportation belt's effect was affected. Go to the underground research lab. I want to find Dr. William to study this. Boss, you have to close the briefcase, otherwise, I can't teleport. The briefcase could shield the magnetic field, otherwise, Deadpool's belt would lose its effect. Fang Ye closed the briefcase, and Deadpool, along with Fang Ye, teleported to the underground research lab. Summoning Dr. William, Fang Ye handed him the silver device, and after examining it for a while, Dr. William came to a conclusion. Boss, this silver device is extremely sophisticated, and it doesn't seem to be of Earth origin. Similar to the space teleportation belt, this silver device also has an energy circulation matrix. Because of the operation of the matrix, it produces a strange magnetic field that affects the restricted space teleportation. However, the magnetic field's range is only about 1 kilometer. The black meteorite embedded in the center of the silver device should be the core of its operation. Energy circulation matrix. Fang Ye somewhat grasped the idea, but he understood one thing: the silver device and the space teleportation belt both possessed unique abilities due to their energy circulation matrices. The only difference was that one enabled space teleportation, while the other restricted it. Suddenly, an idea struck Fang Ye. Since the black meteorite could be used as the core material for the silver device, could it also serve as the core material for the space teleportation device? Take a closer look at the black meteorite at the top of the silver device. Can it be used as the core material for the space teleportation device? It should be usable as the core material for the space teleportation device. Dr. William studied it for a moment and came to a conclusion that pleased Fang Ye. However, Dr. William seemed hesitant, not speaking his mind. Boss, do you really want to destroy this thing? Destroy it? The black meteorite will be used to make the space teleportation device. The device that could restrict space teleportation was undoubtedly a treasure. However, Fang Ye was in a precarious situation now. If he killed Professor X, White Queen, Daredevil, and even Black Widow and Hawkeye, it was uncertain whether he could survive. There were many formidable individuals in Hellfire Club, and not just White Queen. Among them was Phoenix, who could force both Magneto and Professor X to avoid her edge. Therefore, Fang Ye must strengthen his power now. The space teleportation device was undoubtedly a shortcut to enhance his strength. During his battle with the Hulk, if Fang Ye had the space teleportation device at the time, even if he didn't release his anger, he wouldn't have feared the Hulk. Most importantly, Fang Ye had a faint feeling that releasing his anger seemed to have side effects. Chapter 52, Defects. Boss, actually, we can try to merge the two matrices and create a device that can perform both spatial teleportation and restrict spatial teleportation. Dr. Williams' proposal instantly piqued Fang Ye's interest. However, although Fang Ye didn't understand much about matrix knowledge, he knew that the two matrices should be mutually exclusive. How could they be merged? The two matrices can be merged. It's not exactly merging. It's just recording both matrices on the same device. However, when using it, only one function can be activated. After listening to Dr. Williams' explanation, Fang Ye finally understood. Both matrices would be recorded on the device simultaneously, but each time it is used, only one function can be activated. If it's the silver instrument that generates the magnetic field, it's a very special magnetic field. To be precise, it's not exactly a magnetic field but something similar to it. It can not only restrict spatial teleportation but also weaken other types of magnetic fields. Dr. Williams' final words were like the last straw that broke the camel's back, making Fang Ye instantly determined. Being able to restrict spatial teleportation and weaken other types of magnetic fields would make him virtually invincible against mutants like Magneto, who can control magnetic fields. Just activate the field weakening function, and the opponent would be at his mercy. If he encounters someone who can teleport, he can simply activate the function to restrict teleportation, and who would stand a chance in close combat against the Green Giant? By then, he could tear anyone apart as he pleased. However, the device Fang Ye wanted to create was not a spatial teleportation belt but a pair of spatial teleportation pants. Fang Ye wasn't like Dr. Banner, who was a poor guy with disposable underwear. Fang Ye was different. He would use only the best materials in the world to create pants with high abrasion resistance, high elasticity, high defense, high water resistance, high fire resistance, and a series of other effects. Fang Ye wanted to create a unique and exclusive melee artifact for the Green Giant, the four-cornered pants artifact. Let's go with your idea. Got it. After leaving the research department, Fang Ye went to the medical room for a physical examination to check if there were any issues with his body. Because Fang Ye vaguely felt that there might be some problems with his body after releasing his anger during the battle with the Hulk. In the Gene Development Medical Room of the Underground Research Institute, various top-notch medical instruments were placed in the medical room, including many newly developed and yet-to-be-launched products by Osborne Industries. Each of these medical instruments was worth more than tens of millions of dollars. Just in this medical room alone, Fang Ye had invested nearly $5 billion. Boss, please lie down. Dr. Connors nodded to Fang Ye and gestured for him to take off his upper clothing. Fang Ye complied and lay down shirtless on the instrument. After starting the detection instrument, Fang Ye's limbs were fixed, and then the instrument began to scan him back and forth with ultraviolet rays. This detection instrument was currently one of the most advanced medical instruments in the world. It could not only scan and detect a person's physical values comprehensively but also assess their mental state. It was one of the latest top-notch products developed by Osborne Industries. After more than 10 minutes, Fang Ye's body was thoroughly examined, and he came out of the scanning instrument. A moment later, Dr. Connors brought a test report to Fang Ye. Boss, your body is perfectly fine, but your mental state seems a bit unstable. Unstable. In other words, there is a tendency to develop a second personality. Show me the report. After putting on his clothes, Fang Ye took the report and read through it quickly. As he expected, releasing his anger indeed had some after effects. If he were to release his anger a few more times, he might develop a second personality. Fang Ye absolutely would not allow or accept the emergence of a second personality. Though many powerful beings in the Marvel world had second personalities, such as Jean Grey from the X-Men, whose second personality was extremely formidable, but Fang Ye was not afraid of dealing with her. Fang Ye even dared to kill Scott, who had laser eyes. Although he didn't know whether Jean Grey had married Scott by now, their relationship was undoubtedly deep, so it was only natural for Jean Grey to seek revenge for him. However, Magneto must be busy recruiting mutants from Xavier's school now, and they probably didn't have time to bother him. Unless I'm in a life-threatening situation, I should try not to release my anger again. Fang Ye didn't want to experience that feeling of losing control to anger a second time. However, this showed that the Green Giant's genetic code was not perfect. It still had significant flaws that needed improvement. In the original story, Dr. Banner had more than one second personality. He had multiple personalities. Perhaps this was a flaw of the Green Giant's genetic code? Dr. Connors, the top priority for the genetic department from now on is to improve the Green Giant's genetic code. Understood. Dr. Connors respectfully replied. Fang Ye nodded and waved his hand, signaling Dr. Connors to leave. After spending some time in the medical room and carefully reviewing the report again, Fang Ye returned to his top-floor office. Knock knock knock. Come in. As soon as Fang Ye returned to his office and before he could even sit down, he heard a knock on the door. It was Shenlong who entered, holding a file in his hand. He walked up to Fang Ye respectfully and handed him the information. Boss, just 2 hours ago, Tony Stark, the chairman of Stark Industries, was attacked on his way back from demonstrating the new Jericho missile for the Afghan military. He's now missing. Tony is missing. I see. Keep a close eye on the situation in Afghanistan, and inform me immediately if there's any news about Tony. Fang Ye received the information and casually instructed while flipping through the file. Understood. Are you all okay with your injuries? After putting down the file, Fang Ye looked at Shenlong, who had a cold look on his face. After all, Shenlong and the others had suffered quite serious injuries. Especially Shenlong, who was the most severely injured. If it weren't for his super recovery ability, he probably would have died under the laser eyes long ago. Don't worry, boss. Our injuries are fine. Then you should familiarize yourselves with the super soldier suit as soon as possible. Someone might come looking for trouble in a while, and you'll have to handle it. Yes. You may go now. When Fang Ye mentioned people coming to make trouble, he was naturally referring to Hellfire and Xavier's school. Fang Ye had killed their people, and revenge was inevitable. Fang Ye hadn't forgotten about Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. either, but since the Avengers hadn't been formed yet, and they probably didn't have time to deal with him. As for Hydra, Fang Ye didn't know much about them and whether there were any powerful figures among them. However, if Shenlong and the others became familiar with the super soldier suit, green demon suit, their strength would increase exponentially. If they were to encounter Daredevil, the Black Bishop, and the other four again, who could say who would emerge victorious? Sitting in his office chair, Fang Ye opened the intelligence file and absent-mindedly tapped the desk. So, is the Iron Man armor about to appear? Maybe that's a good thing for me. Chapter 53, Silkworm and Spider Silk. Is the Iron Man armor about to be unveiled? Perhaps it's a good thing for me, Fang Ye said as he lay on his office chair, rubbing his temples. Regarding the Iron Man armor, Fang Ye couldn't deny that he had been keeping an eye on it for the past 2 years. He had been waiting for the Iron Man armor to be unveiled. Because Fang Ye had been planning to form a team of Iron Man armors. Even in the beginning, when he obtained J.A.R.V.I.SS subprogram from Tony, it was ostensibly for defense against spy infiltration, but secretly, Fang Ye had a hidden agenda. Currently, J.A.R.V.I.SS subprogram source code was being studied by the scientists in the research department. After all, J.A.R.V.I.SS subprogram was only a subprogram and was subject to JARVIS. If Fang Ye didn't want to be subject to someone else's control, he needed to develop his own intelligent program. The core of the Iron Man armor was the reactor, there was no doubt about that. But without an intelligent program, the Iron Man armor would be nothing more than a pile of scrap metal. Tony was just an ordinary person, and his neural response speed was much slower compared to Fang Ye. Even now, Fang Ye couldn't guarantee that he could control the Iron Man armor with ease at supersonic speeds. What gave Tony the confidence to do so? It was all because of the intelligent program, JARVIS. With the reactor design schematics, it was not difficult for Fang Ye. The real difficulty lay in the lack of an intelligent program. In the future, Fang Ye would face many enemies, not only various factions but also the US government. Once the Tesseract was discovered, the US government would definitely intervene. By then, if Fang Ye wanted to keep the Tesseract, he must have the strength to counter all the forces. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. As the Iron Man armor was about to be unveiled, Fang Ye had been more focused on developing the intelligent program lately, and he would occasionally visit the research department. Underground Research Laboratory, Research Department Office. Fang Ye sat on the sofa, holding a report in his hand, carefully reviewing it. Standing opposite Fang Ye was a middle-aged African-American man named Dr. Kuwait Kane. He was one of the deputy directors of the research department and was in charge of the development of the intelligent program. After Fang Ye put down the report, a cold expression appeared in his eyes as he coldly stared at Dr. Kuwait. Dr. Kuwait, is this the result of your research for the past few months? Boss, I'm sorry, we have disappointed you. Dr. Kuwait's face showed a sense of guilt. Fang Ye had provided them with the best conditions, but for the past few months, they had made no progress, which made the group of scientists feel ashamed. Fang Ye frowned and sighed inwardly. After all, not everyone was a genius like Tony. Boss, the source code you gave us for the program is incomplete. We have encountered several difficulties that we can't overcome, so there has been no progress in the research. You may go now, and I will find a complete source code for you. Fang Ye waved his hand, letting Dr. Kuwait step back. Dr. Kuwait respectfully responded and left the office. It seems Tony is still cautious about me, knowing that he has left a backdoor in the JARVIS subprogram source code. Fang Ye was not surprised by this. He had never underestimated anyone in the Marvel world. Every person who achieved something had their extraordinary abilities. Anyone who regarded others as fools was, in fact, the real fool. In fact, for the past 2 years, Fang Ye had already asked Tony for the intelligent program, and he had even offered a high price to buy it, but Tony had rejected him without a doubt. Now that Tony is not at Stark Industries, it's the best time to steal the JARVIS subprogram source code. Fang Ye pondered, tapping his desk with his fingers. He had already made a decision. However, Fang Ye didn't have any espionage talents under him, which made him a bit troubled. For Fang Ye, as long as the problem could be solved with money, it was not a problem. However, people like Tony were the most difficult for Fang Ye because they lacked nothing, and it was hard to find their weaknesses. Time passed quickly, and a month passed. During this time, Fang Ye sent several groups of people to Stark Industries to steal the JARVIS subprogram source code, but unfortunately, they all ended in failure. In the end, Fang Ye had to offer a reward in the underground world, with a bounty of $5 billion. Because of Fang Ye's huge reward, many spies flocked to Stark Industries, but so far, no one had succeeded. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Fang Ye looked up and saw Dr. William entering. Boss, the spatial teleportation device is ready. Oh, let's go to the genetic department. Dr. Connors should have everything prepared as well. Fang Ye smiled and waited for this moment for so long. The artifact of the pants was finally about to be born. Afterward, Fang Ye couldn't wait any longer and led Dr. William to the genetic department, heading straight for Dr. Connors' office. Dr. Connors had been waiting for them after receiving the notice. After Fang Ye and Dr. William arrived, the three of them put on white lab coats and headed to the genetic department's biological cultivation room. In the biological cultivation room, nearly 100 types of mutated organisms were being cultivated, including mutant lizards, mutant Spider-Man, mutant snow silkworms, mutant flies, mutant butterflies, and so on. There were countless species. It could be said that a third of the annual budget of the genetic department was spent here. And for the creation of the pants artifact, Fang Ye would need the silk from two types of mutants, the super mutant snow silkworm and the super mutant spider. The silk produced by the super snow silkworm was impervious to water and fire, extremely durable, and almost as hard as metal. The silk produced by the super spider was both flexible and elastic. The silk from the two mutants was undoubtedly the top choice of materials for making the pants artifact. However, the production of the two silks was extremely limited, so half a year ago, Fang Ye had instructed Dr. Connors to collect as much as possible. Dr. Connors, do you have enough silk from the silkworms and spiders? We have enough. Fang Ye nodded in satisfaction. The two silks would be used to make the pants. Not only were they highly elastic, but they also had strong defense, were wear-resistant, waterproof, and fireproof, among other effects. This was exactly the kind of pants Fang Ye had envisioned. With the addition of the spatial teleportation device, the pants would immediately become an artifact. After returning to his office, Fang Ye thought for a moment and called Shu Long, asking him to come over. Now that the pants artifact was about to be made, it was time for Fang Ye to take action against Xavier's school for gifted youngsters. That's right. Fang Ye intended to take action against Xavier's school. There was no day that a thief could last for 1,000 days, and since they were at odds, there was no other way but to fight back. Originally, Fang Ye didn't rush to take action because Magneto was keeping them in check, and Xavier's school didn't have time to trouble him. Second, the pants artifact had not been made yet. Now that the pants artifact was nearly completed, it was natural for Fang Ye to take the initiative, to reject the enemy at the gate. Throughout Xavier's school, the only person Fang Ye truly feared was Jean Grey, or more accurately, her second personality, the Black Phoenix. In addition, the brainwave amplifier must be destroyed. That thing was too perverted, and there were many people in the Marvel world with telepathic abilities. Fang Ye couldn't rest assured until the brainwave amplifier was destroyed. After a while, Shu Long arrived at the office. Boss, sit down and tell me, how familiar are you with the super soldier suit? As Fang Ye planned to destroy Xavier's school, Shu Long and the other 10 super soldiers would be essential. We are fully familiar with it and can coordinate closely. Very good. Fang Ye smiled faintly, got up, walked to the window, and looked down at the vast land below, a trace of killing intent flashing in his eyes. Then tomorrow night, you all will accompany me to destroy Xavier's school. Chapter 54, The Pants Artifact. So, tomorrow night, you all will accompany me to destroy Xavier's school. Fang Ye stood with his hands behind his back, looking out over the vast land through the glass wall, his tone filled with killing intent. In fact, in recent times, Fang Ye had been keeping a close eye on the activities of the Brotherhood and Xavier's school. After Professor X's death, Xavier's school underwent a major change. 1/3 of the mutants were brought under the command of Magneto and joined the Brotherhood. A small number of mutants chose to leave Xavier's school, and those who remained accounted for only 1/4 of the original number. Now was undoubtedly the best time to destroy Xavier's school. Not only did Fang Ye want to eliminate Xavier's school, but Magneto would also not allow it to continue to exist. As Magneto said when Professor X died, in the future mutant society, there will only be one voice. Even if Xavier's school still existed in name, as long as it continued to exist, it would affect Magneto's rule. When you lie on the bed, how can you allow others to sleep soundly? This principle was understood not only by the Chinese but also by Magneto. Boss, should we hire some mercenaries? Shu Long suddenly suggested. Fang Ye remained silent for a moment before slowly nodding and coldly saying, hire several mercenary groups. Let them carry heavy weapons, and I want to raise Xavier's school to the ground. I will contact them immediately. Shu Long responded respectfully. Fang Ye waved his hand, letting Shu Long handle it on his own. Shu Long had been a mercenary before and was very familiar with the mercenary world. He knew which mercenary groups had strong capabilities. Fang Ye was confident in leaving this matter to him. Not every mutant possessed powerful abilities. Hiring several mercenary groups and suppressing Xavier's school with heavy firepower was indeed necessary. If it weren't for fear of causing a big mess and ending on a bad note, Fang Ye even considered using missiles to bombard the school. With Fang Ye's current status and identity, acquiring missiles was not a difficult task. He had good cooperation with many arms dealers, and as a director of Stark Industries, a world-class arms manufacturer, he had access to various resources. At noon the next day, in the top-floor office, looking at the black four-cornered pants placed on the desk, a smile appeared on Fang Ye's face. The four-cornered pants looked ordinary, similar to regular boxer shorts. They were entirely black, and the only eye-catching feature was 2 buttons beside the waistband, one red and one white. Fang Ye's gaze turned to Dr. William, and the doctor immediately understood, beginning to explain to Fang Ye. Boss, according to the design you provided, we have made these boxer shorts. They have a certain defensive capability and extremely strong elasticity. Additionally, they have a series of other effects, such as being waterproof, fireproof, and wear-resistant. The red button is the switch for spatial teleportation, while the white button restricts spatial teleportation and weakens other magnetic fields. Good. You have done well. You have made it as per my expectations. Fang Ye was in a good mood and praised them, which was a rare occurrence. Dr. William was a bit surprised since Fang Ye rarely complimented people. You're too kind, boss. It's what we should do. It's nothing. Among all the doctors, I value you the most, Dr. William. Your research in spatial fields is undoubtedly top-notch in the world. Let me be frank with you. Have you heard of the cosmic cube? Fang Ye fell silent for a moment before speaking sincerely. Because Fang Ye planned to excavate the cosmic cube at the end of this year, he had never mentioned it to Dr. William before, mainly because he wanted to keep it secret. Now, he informed Dr. William because he wanted him to be prepared in advance. The cosmic cube. I seem to have heard of it vaguely. Dr. William frowned, showing a thoughtful expression. Fang Ye smiled and took out the prepared information from the drawer, handing it to Dr. William. As Dr. William read the information, he became engrossed. It took him nearly half an hour to finish reading it before he returned to his senses. I'm sorry, boss, but is this thing really real? Of course, it's real. Fang Ye gave him a definite answer. Dr. William, I will find a way to excavate the cosmic cube. As the information stated, the cosmic cube can open a spacetime tunnel. Once we obtain it, I hope you will use the cosmic cube to open a spacetime tunnel for me. Don't ask me why I want to do this. I will tell you what you need to know, and it's not good for you to know things you shouldn't. I will do my best. Dr. William's expression was extremely serious. He had no reason to refuse. Participating in the research on the cosmic cube was a dream come true for a spatial expert like him. After Dr. William agreed, Fang Ye nodded in satisfaction and instructed him, from now on, Dr. William, your main task is to prepare for the opening of the spacetime tunnel in the future. When the cosmic cube is found, I hope you can open a spacetime tunnel for me as quickly as possible. I will fully support your research from now on. Yes. After discussing some topics related to the cosmic cube, Fang Ye let Dr. William leave. The cosmic cube was still buried under the deep-sea glacier. For the past 2 years, Fang Ye had kept the information about the cosmic cube under wraps. The preparations for excavating the cosmic cube had already been completed, and they were just waiting for the right moment to start. When would be the right time? Once the cosmic cube was excavated, it would undoubtedly attract the attention of various forces, and even the US government might not be able to sit still. Since Fang Ye knew that he would be scrutinized by various major forces in the future, and there might even be a siege, why not take the initiative now and eliminate those forces that could pose a threat to him one by one? Xavier's school, Hydra, Hellfire Club, and even the Brotherhood were all included. Because Fang Ye couldn't be sure whether Magneto would come and challenge him after the cosmic cube was excavated. Before the end of the year, Fang Ye's goal was to recruit those supercriminals. As long as their strength met the standard, whether through coercion or enticement, he would recruit them. Fang Ye didn't care about their loyalty. As long as they fulfilled the tasks he assigned, he had many means to control them. At least, he could guarantee that those people wouldn't rebel against him before he left the Marvel world. As for what would happen after he left the Marvel world, Fang Ye wouldn't care about the chaos that might ensue. After Dr. William left, Fang Ye quickly took off his outer pants and put on the four-cornered pants. A satisfied smile appeared on Fang Ye's face. The four-cornered pants were not as tight as he had imagined. Instead, they were very comfortable to wear. In fact, as the Green Giant, he didn't need any equipment with his defense. Battle attire would only restrict him. The four-cornered pants were just a piece of cover-up cloth. Fang Ye wasn't interested in revealing his little brother. However, now, after embedding spatial teleportation and magnetic field weakening devices, these pants could truly be called artifact-level pants. Let's try the effect. Fang Ye put on his outer pants again and pressed the red button through the clothes. With a thought, his figure instantly appeared on the sofa on the other side of the office. Not bad, not bad. Fang Ye was a little excited. He had teleported before, but that was when Deadpool took him. It was a completely different feeling when he did it himself. It was like the difference between riding a plane and flying on your own. They were completely different experiences. Chapter 55, Taking the Initiative? In the office, after conducting several experiments, Fang Ye teleported back to his seaside villa. More precisely, it was a private island. It's worth mentioning that the private island was only about 10 kilometers away from Tony's seaside villa. Back on the private island, Fang Ye teleported around freely. This place belonged to him, so he didn't have to worry about being disturbed. After half a day of experimentation, Fang Ye found that the teleportation device in his pants did have some shortcomings. After all, the genuine article is the genuine article. Deadpool's teleportation belt doesn't have any limitations. Though it had some limitations, Fang Ye was still satisfied. Deadpool's spatial teleportation belt allowed him to teleport to any place he had been to before, as long as he had a mental image of it. Even if it was from one end of the earth to the other, he could do it. But Fang Ye's teleportation device in his pants had a distance limitation. Each teleportation couldn't exceed 100 kilometers. As for the functions of limiting spatial teleportation and weakening magnetic fields, Fang Ye hadn't experimented with them yet because he didn't have any test subjects. Of course, Fang Ye's private island wasn't even close to 100 kilometers in size. In the afternoon, Fang Ye didn't just stay on the island. After becoming familiar with and in control of the teleportation device in his pants, he teleported to other places. Through experimentation, he found that the maximum distance he could teleport was 100 kilometers. Comparatively speaking, Fang Ye was quite satisfied with the teleportation device in his pants. After all, it had two additional features, limiting teleportation and weakening magnetic fields, compared to Deadpool's spatial teleportation belt. As the sun set, night fell. Fang Ye didn't have the mood to continue experimenting, so he teleported back to the living room of the villa. He first took a shower to wash away the sweat, then returned to the living room and walked to the balcony, where he lay down on a rocking chair and poured himself a glass of wine. After a while, as the sky darkened completely, a buzzing sound approached from afar. Fang Ye, holding a glass of red wine, waited quietly. Before long, 5 helicopters slowly approached. It's time to set off. Fang Ye put down the wine glass and disappeared from the rocking chair. The next moment, he appeared on the rooftop of the villa. The rooftop was extremely spacious, with more than enough space for 5 helicopters to land. As the 5 helicopters approached and landed on the rooftop, over 20 tall and sturdy mercenaries carrying individual rocket launchers quickly disembarked from the helicopters. Fang Ye glanced at the helicopters and saw that a Gatling gun was mounted at the entrance of each helicopter, which made him nod in satisfaction. This was the firepower he wanted? Boss, hello. The over 20 mercenaries showed respectful expressions. Although they were all top mercenaries in the mercenary world, they knew who the person in front of them was. He was a man they could hardly look up to in their entire lives. Fang Ye was not famous in the mercenary world, but Shu Long, his alias, was renowned. After learning that Shu Long's boss was Fang Ye, these mercenaries felt relieved, but at the same time, they couldn't help but envy him. To be able to join such a big boss was something they dreamed of. They wanted to perform well in front of Fang Ye this time, even if they couldn't join his team. They wanted to secure the opportunity for future cooperation. Of course, the main reason was that Fang Ye paid well. This time, they were paid 3 times the usual fee. Money makes the world go round, and it was especially true in the mercenary world. Fang Ye didn't pay much attention to them. Instead, he looked towards the distant horizon. They're here. A smile appeared on Fang Ye's face. Soon after he spoke, a gust of wind could be heard from afar. Including Shu Long, a total of 10 super soldiers, each wearing the green demon suit and gliding wings, landed on the rooftop of the villa in a majestic manner. Boss. After landing, the 10 super soldiers took off their masks, showing extremely respectful expressions. Fang Ye nodded and waved his hand. Since everyone's here, let's set off. Yes. All of the over 20 mercenaries, including the 10 super soldiers, responded respectfully. Fang Ye didn't bring Deadpool with him on this mission. After all, they needed someone to guard the UI building. He didn't want their main base to be taken over. Deadpool, with his spatial teleportation ability, was undoubtedly the best choice for this task. Of course, to make Deadpool willingly stay to guard the UI building, Fang Ye had to pay him a generous bonus. Let's go. 5 A-64 Apache helicopters, accompanied by the fully armed 10 super soldiers, set off mightily towards X Academy. Actually, X Academy had considerable technological capabilities. Relying solely on the weapons carried by these mercenaries wouldn't be enough to flatten the Academy. However, Fang Ye didn't intend to completely destroy X Academy this time. His main goal was to destroy the brainwave amplifier. Perhaps Professor X never imagined that the device he wanted to use to destroy the human enhancement drugs would be destroyed by Fang Ye now. What goes around comes around. X Academy was located in a private mansion in the Westchester area of New York. From the sky, the mansion covered more than 10 acres, while X Academy occupied an area of about 3 to 4 acres. From the outside, it looked like an ancient house surrounded by green plants, but it was, in fact, a super mansion with various facilities such as gardens and basketball courts. However, this was just the surface of X Academy. There was much more hidden underground. The underground base contained several medical laboratories, a training facility known as the Danger Room, an underground jet airport, and a secret chamber housing Professor X's mutant detection device, the brainwave amplifier. With the firepower carried by the 5 helicopters, it was impossible to flatten the underground base from above. The underground defenses were bound to be strong, unless they used large-scale missiles to bomb the ground. Fang Ye didn't fly using the gliding wings this time. Instead, he sat in one of the helicopters. While Fang Ye was resting his eyes, he suddenly heard Shu Long's voice through the earpiece. "Boss, we've arrived. We're now in the Westchester area. Pause for now." Fang Ye opened his eyes and picked up the small microphone on his chest to give instructions. "Shu Long, go and scout the situation first." Yes. The activity of 5 helicopters would make too much noise, and Fang Ye didn't want to alert the enemy prematurely. Gliding wings didn't create much noise during flight, except when flying at high speeds, which would produce a sonic boom. The reason Fang Ye chose tonight to take down X Academy was that he received information that the Brotherhood of Mutants was planning to attack X Academy tonight. As he expected, Magneto couldn't tolerate X Academy, because X Academy was founded by Professor X, and it bore his mark. Professor X's ideology had always been about peaceful coexistence between mutants and humans, while Magneto believed that mutants were superior to humans. Both ideologies had numerous supporters in the mutant society. Now that Professor X had fallen, Magneto wouldn't let X Academy continue to exist in order to avoid any impact on his future rule. In fact, if Fang Ye were in Magneto's position, he wouldn't let X Academy continue to exist either. Moreover, he agreed with Magneto's ideology to some extent. This world was, after all, a survival of the fittest, and the strong should be high above the weak. Chapter 56, Destroying the Base. After a moment, Shu Long flew back from a distance with his gliding wings. Having practiced with the gliding wings for a month, Shu Long had become proficient in their control. He could now fly without making any whistling sound. "Boss, the Brotherhood has already made a move. So, it seems that the intelligence provided by our infiltrators in the Brotherhood was not wrong." Fang Ye remained calm and nodded slowly. In fact, Fang Ye had not only placed infiltrators in the Brotherhood but also in Hellfire and S.H.I.E.L.D. However, since they hadn't been undercover for long, their identities were not particularly high. "Boss, should we take action immediately? Wait a little longer. It's best if both sides are heavily injured, and then we can clean up the mess." This operation to wipe out X Academy and destroy the brainwave amplifier was only one of Fang Ye's objectives. If possible, he even planned to take down the Brotherhood together. As long as he could kill Magneto, Fang Ye was confident he could subdue and recruit the other mutants in the Brotherhood. Although Magneto had helped him several times, they had no real friendship between them. They were just using each other. If he had the chance to swallow UI Fund, Magneto probably wouldn't hesitate either. This world was a survival of the fittest, and the strong should act first while the weak would suffer the consequences. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, thunderous sounds could be heard from over 10 miles away. Lightning flashed in the distance, tearing through the sky. What was astonishing was that the nearby area remained calm, as if it were 2 separate worlds. It should be Storm's ability. Storm was born in a certain African country and had a family heritage of controlling the weather. She had the natural ability to manipulate lightning, create tornadoes, and bring about storms. But since Storm had used her powerful ability, the battle should be intense. Fang Ye wondered which side had the upper hand. "It's our turn to take action? Let's go." Yes. Shu Long and the others were eager to go. Following Fang Ye's command, they used their gliding wings to lead the way. Among the mutants, many had long-range attack abilities. Flying 5 helicopters over would likely attract attention and be shot down by the mutants. Shu Long and the 10 super soldiers were responsible for dealing with the mutants. Boom. After arriving above X Academy, Shu Long and the 10 super soldiers controlled their gliding wings and dived down. They dropped dozens of green demon bombs, and the 5 helicopters followed, unleashing a hail of gunfire that slaughtered the weaker mutants below. Explosions resounded throughout X Academy, leaving many mutants disoriented. They all thought that the newcomers were reinforcements for the other side. However, when they saw the forces of the other side being bombarded by rockets and hiding everywhere, they were shocked. A group of ruthless people seemed to have emerged from nowhere, aiming to wipe them all out. Damn it! Find a place to hide. Not all mutants were strong enough to be bulletproof, otherwise, mutants would have dominated the world long ago. Not far away, Magneto, who was currently controlling Wolverine and still had the ability to deal with others, saw the situation and let out a cold snort. He activated his massive magnetic field, imprisoning the bullets that were flying towards them in midair. However, before Magneto could take further action, he suddenly found his magnetic field weakening, and the bullets began to fall from midair. Right in front of him stood a young man. The young man was dressed in a snow-white suit, with a clean and fair face, exuding a sharp and handsome aura. His deep, dark eyes gazed at Magneto with a seemingly smiling but not smiling expression. Magneto, it's been a while. Fang Ye. The young man was indeed Fang Ye. After teleporting down from the helicopter, Fang Ye instantly activated the function to weaken the magnetic field, creating the scene just now. Magneto stared angrily at Fang Ye, but what made him more uneasy was the fact that his powers seemed to be restricted. More precisely, they were weakened. Magneto felt that he had only about 1/10 of his original control over the magnetic field, making his strength plummet to its lowest point in history. Magneto, it seems like you're quite excited to see me, huh? Fang Ye smiled, staring at Magneto coldly. At this moment, S.H.I.E.L.D and 4 other super soldiers, flying on their gliding wings, floated behind Fang Ye, keeping a vigilant eye on their surroundings. The other 5 super soldiers each guarded 1 helicopter. In fact, Fang Ye didn't need the protection of S.H.I.E.L.D and the others. When he wasn't transformed, his strength was indeed not very strong. But anyone who tried to ambush him would be foolish. As soon as he foresaw any danger, Fang Ye would immediately transform into the Green Giant. Even though anyone in the world could be assassinated, Fang Ye with his foresight ability was an exception. Magneto, it seems like you don't mind cooperating with me this time. I'm honored. Your nickname is Wolverine, right? Do you want the Brotherhood and me to work together to wipe out X Academy? Or will you choose to hand over the brainwave amplifier? You. Wolverine gritted his teeth in anger, wishing he could tear Fang Ye to pieces with his claws. Magneto stood silently at the side. Although he appeared smiling, he was filled with gloom in his heart. He didn't know what method Fang Ye had used, but his abilities were indeed being restrained. He knew Fang Ye very well. This time, Fang Ye's intentions were probably not that simple. We agree. At this moment, Storm spoke up. After careful consideration, Storm chose to compromise. The Brotherhood was already stronger than them, and throughout the battle, they had been suppressed. If Fang Ye were to cooperate with the Brotherhood again, X Academy would really be in danger today. Wise people are truly outstanding. Where is the brainwave amplifier? It's in the underground base. Storm's face turned cold. She was not happy about being forced into this situation. S.H.I.E.L.D, take your men and get the brainwave amplifier. Fang Ye first gave S.H.I.E.L.D the order and then looked at Storm. Storm, you probably wouldn't mind leading my men there, would you? I'll take them. Wolverine snorted. Although he was extremely unwilling, he knew he had no choice. Fang Ye waved his hand, and S.H.I.E.L.D understood. Boom, boom, boom. A moment later, the earth trembled violently, as if there was an earthquake. Seeing this, Fang Ye's face revealed a smile. His goal was not only to destroy the brainwave amplifier but also to blow up the underground base. You're going back on your word. Storm was not foolish. From the tremors of the ground, it was apparent that the underground base had collapsed. Before she could finish speaking, a roar interrupted her. Roar. Fang Ye's body rapidly expanded, his skin turned green, and his clothes were torn apart. He let out a furious roar, transforming into the Green Giant. Chapter 57, Subduing the Mutants. Roar. With a deafening roar, as the Fang Ye's body grew taller, his skin visibly transformed into green at a rapid pace. The ferocious and muscular figure, somewhat exaggerated and brimming with explosive power, once again perfectly manifested on Fang Ye. Roar. Fang Ye let out a low growl, and before everyone could react, he had already charged towards Magneto. Against all expectations, Fang Ye did not attack X-Mansion as everyone thought he would. Instead, he went straight for Magneto, intending to deal with him first. Due to the sudden turn of events, and no one expecting Fang Ye to suddenly challenge the Brotherhood, only a few of the mutants on the Brotherhood's side managed to react. Stop him, arrogant fool. Saber-toothed Tiger was the first to react and stood in front of Magneto, attempting to block Fang Ye's path. Fang Ye sneered coldly in his heart and unhesitatingly threw a powerful punch. Boom. Saber-toothed Tiger felt like he had been hit by a speeding train. His body was sent flying uncontrollably, feeling intense pain in his abdomen as blood involuntarily spewed from his mouth. The force behind Fang Ye's punch was incredibly enormous. If not for Saber-toothed Tiger's strong regenerative ability, he would have probably been killed instantly. Even so, Saber-toothed Tiger was now left with only half his life, unable to get up from the ground. Lord Fang Ye. Without giving Magneto a chance to speak, Fang Ye made it clear that he intended to kill Magneto today. If Magneto did not die, how could Fang Ye subdue the mutants in the Brotherhood? Blame it on this world? People are often forced into situations they don't desire, all because Magneto stood in Fang Ye's way. Stop him. Seeing Fang Ye's determination to kill, Magneto knew that words were useless. Unfortunately, the likes of Toad and others, who Magneto had pinned great hopes on, were easily knocked away by Fang Ye. They couldn't stop Fang Ye's advance, nor could they buy Magneto any time to escape. Closing in on Magneto, Fang Ye grabbed him by the neck, lifting Magneto off the ground. Magneto, do you have any last wishes? Cough. Fang Ye, indeed, you have quite the methods. For this mission to eliminate X-Mansion, Magneto had made elaborate arrangements and went to great lengths to lure Phoenix away. However, Magneto did not anticipate that while X-Mansion and the Brotherhood were both suffering heavy losses in their confrontation, Fang Ye would suddenly appear and wipe out both forces. But what puzzled Magneto the most was how Fang Ye got the information about this highly secretive operation. He could never believe it was a mere coincidence. It seems you have no last wishes. Crack. Fang Ye showed no mercy, snapping Magneto's neck with a single twist before casually tossing his lifeless body aside. And thus, the reign of the Warlord came to an end. After Magneto's death, Fang Ye deactivated the weakening magnetic field and activated the spatial teleportation function. At this moment, the others, including S.H.I.E.L.D, returned. However, Wolverine was in hot pursuit behind them. Wolverine was furious. Upon entering the underground base with S.H.I.E.L.D's group, they had immediately blown it up without any hesitation. The strongest fortresses were often breached from within, and no matter how strong the defenses of an underground base were, they couldn't withstand internal explosions. The entire base was destroyed, and naturally, the brainwave amplifier would no longer exist. Boom! Fang Ye teleported next to Wolverine, sending him flying with a punch. Then, with another teleport, Fang Ye stumped Wolverine, who had just fallen to the ground, into the earth. Release Logan. Storm's eyes glimmered with a different light, and dark clouds quickly gathered above Fang Ye's head, accompanied by thunder and lightning. A tornado gradually formed in midair. Roar! Fang Ye looked up and let out a long howl, generating a powerful sonic boom that dissipated the forming dark clouds before they could fully coalesce. At the same time, with another teleport, Fang Ye sent Storm flying with a punch. This was the power of the Green Giant combined with teleportation, a perfect fusion of speed and strength. Having spatial teleportation elevated Fang Ye's power to more than double its original level. Since his transformation until now, it had only been less than a minute. However, the display of power was enough to terrify all the mutants. Regardless of Wolverine, Storm, Saber-Toothed Tiger, Toad, or others, they were all well-known and powerful figures in the mutant society. But in front of Fang Ye, they were like infants, completely without the ability to resist. Especially Magneto's death, which sent shockwaves through the crowd of mutants, was an enormous blow. No mercy for escapees. S.H.I.E.L.D and the others took their positions, surrounding the mutants, and 5 helicopters hovered in the sky with their barrels pointed at the crowd below. The atmosphere became extremely tense. Fang Ye's green eyes swept the surroundings, emotionless and filled with all kinds of negative feelings. Now, I'll give you a chance, either pledge allegiance to me, or I'll send you to meet God. Our Brotherhood will never submit to you. Before Toad could finish speaking, Fang Ye teleported and slapped him, crushing his head with a single blow. Is there anyone else who refuses to surrender? The scene fell silent, and who in this world wasn't afraid of death? Seeing Toad get killed by Fang Ye with just a single sentence, everyone fell silent. Inject them with the serum. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D and the others immediately took action, injecting each mutant with a vial of blue serum. After Fang Ye's display of power just now, none of the mutants dared to resist. The serum could temporarily suppress the mutants' abilities. It was something Fang Ye had spent a lot of money to acquire, bought from William Stryker. Among all the mutants, only those with mental resistance or unyielding willpower could be immune to the hypnosis of Kakara. Therefore, Kakara's hypnosis and brainwashing ability had its limitations and was not all-powerful. With the mutants' abilities suppressed, Fang Ye felt at ease leaving them in S.H.I.E.L.D's care and reverted to his normal appearance. S.H.I.E.L.D promptly handed him a cloak, draping it over Fang Ye's shoulders. S.H.I.E.L.D, take these people back and let Kakara use his hypnosis on them. Yes. S.H.I.E.L.D couldn't help but feel sorry for Kakara. There were hundreds of mutants here, and Kakara would have to hypnotize all of them. It would be quite a busy time for him. Although Kakara wasn't particularly strong, he held a special position under Fang Ye because of his unique abilities. However, Kakara's abilities had limitations. Those with psychic abilities or strong willpower could resist his hypnosis. This showed that Kakara's hypnosis and brainwashing powers were not all-encompassing. With the mutants' abilities suppressed, Fang Ye felt at ease leaving them in S.H.I.E.L.D's care. He then teleported back to Yui Tower. It seems the plan can be implemented ahead of schedule. Fang Ye didn't expect things to go so smoothly. Subduing hundreds of mutants had greatly increased his influence. Of course, among the hundreds of mutants, there were strong and weak ones, and the truly powerful ones were just a few. Chapter 58, Phoenix Woman. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had passed since the eradication of the Brotherhood and X Academy, and hundreds of mutants were taken back to the UI building. The destruction of the Brotherhood and X Academy caused a huge shock in the mutant society. No one had expected that these two major forces would disappear and become history like this. Especially the deaths of Magneto and Professor X sent seismic waves through the mutant society. One of them had created the Brotherhood, leading mutants to resist against humans. The other had established X Academy, sheltering and guiding mutants to coexist peacefully with humans. In terms of reputation within the mutant society, Magneto and Professor X were undoubtedly the highest regarded individuals, and they were also the most powerful mutants. However, now both of them had fallen at the hands of the same person. From an unknown time, the name Fang Ye had become a taboo among mutants. New York City, Brooklyn. A woman dressed in a purple tight-fitting suit strolled leisurely on the streets. Her appearance wasn't excessively glamorous, but she exuded a unique aura, giving people an extremely stunning feeling. She was Jean Grey from X Academy, and Brooklyn was her hometown. Upon learning about the destruction of X Academy and the disbandment of the Brotherhood, Jean Grey knew she had been deceived. After making several inquiries, she finally understood the situation. The fall of X Academy had become an established fact, and nothing could change it. However, Wolverine, Storm, and the others were currently imprisoned in the UI building, and her mission was to rescue them from Wall Street. Jean Grey held a deep grudge against Fang Ye because of what happened to Professor X, Charles Xavier, and her romantic partner, Cyclops, Scott Summers. They had all perished at the hands of Fang Ye. Who are you? Jean Grey suddenly stopped her steps, lifting her gaze to examine the person blocking her path. The man had a full beard and was dressed in a black leather jacket, but what caught her attention the most was the eye patch he wore. Hello, Miss Grey, I am Nick Fury, the current director of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't know anything about S.H.I.E.L.D. Jean Grey never had a good impression of government agencies and had no interest in dealing with them. She replied indifferently and tried to walk around Nick Fury. Even though she was being ignored, Nick Fury's expression remained unchanged. Miss Grey, even if you go to the UI building now, you won't be able to rescue Wolverine and the others. If you trust me, S.H.I.E.L.D. can help you. Help me? S.H.I.E.L.D. has faced Fang Ye several times, and it seems like you always end up at a disadvantage, right? Jean Grey halted and turned back with a cold smile. Nick Fury's expression didn't change, but a barely noticeable coldness flickered in his eyes. I won't deny that we underestimated Fang Ye and suffered multiple failures in our operations. However, I can vouch for S.H.I.E.L.D's reputation. If I say we can help you rescue them, then we undoubtedly have the capability. If you don't believe it, then there's nothing I can do. What do I have to give in return? Jean Grey knew that it would be extremely difficult for her to rescue Wolverine and the others from the UI building alone. However, she also understood that there was no such thing as a free lunch, and S.H.I.E.L.D. wouldn't help her without any strings attached. You don't need to give anything. Just cooperate with S.H.I.E.L.D., and in the future, we'll work together to deal with Fang Ye. I believe you won't refuse, right? I agree. Jean Grey didn't hesitate at all and readily agreed. Her enmity with Fang Ye was as deep as the ocean, and even if she didn't cooperate with S.H.I.E.L.D., she would still take on Fang Ye. Even if it meant sinking into darkness, she would do it without hesitation. Of course, she had taken the opportunity to read Nick Fury's memories just now and knew that he wasn't lying. Otherwise, she wouldn't have trusted him so easily. Nick Fury finally smiled, knowing full well about Phoenix Woman's power. With her joining, his plan had gained further assurance. When will the people be rescued? Jean Grey was anxious to save her friends and hoped they could be rescued as soon as possible. Understanding her feelings, Nick Fury smiled calmly and assured her, Miss Grey, you can rest assured. Our people have infiltrated the UI building. I guarantee that we'll rescue the X Academy members within a week. I hope you can keep your word. Jean Grey didn't say anything more. She wasn't entirely convinced of S.H.I.E.L.D's capabilities, as they had suffered losses at Fang Ye's hands before. However, she had no other choice but to place her hope in S.H.I.E.L.D. Afterward, the two went to a cafe, and no one knew what they discussed. However, it was evident that Nick Fury left with a satisfied expression, indicating that the conversation went well. Wall Street, UI building. In the top floor director's office, Kakala was reporting to Fang Ye about the recent situation regarding hypnotic brainwashing. Boss, a total of 224 people have been processed. In the past 3 days, most of them have been successfully brainwashed. However, there are 4 individuals with strong willpower or special abilities that my hypnosis couldn't affect. 4 individuals? Who are they? Fang Ye suddenly became interested. He wanted to know who these 4 people were, capable of resisting Kakula's hypnotic abilities. Kakula respectfully handed a list to Fang Ye. Scarlet Witch, Wolverine, Storm. Oh, one person managed to escape. Fang Ye's brows furrowed when he noticed that one person had escaped. However, when he saw the name on the list, he wasn't surprised. Catherine Pride, Phantom Cat. Her abilities included phasing through objects and immunity to mental attacks. Having mental immunity meant resistance to Kakula's hypnosis, and her ability to phase through objects meant there was hardly any place that could hold her. However, Fang Ye couldn't help but feel regretful. Phantom Cat was precisely the kind of talent he needed right now. If he could send her to steal the intelligent program source code, the chances of success would be the highest. Unfortunately, these idiots didn't keep an eye on such a valuable talent, and she managed to escape. Boss, we have already dispatched people to hunt down Phantom Cat. As for the remaining 3, how should we handle them? No need to hunt down Phantom Cat. Her abilities are unique, and you won't be able to catch her. Fang Ye wasn't heartless. If something went beyond the capabilities of his subordinates, he wouldn't blame them. Of course, if someone's actions led to a delay in his grand plan due to their incompetence, Fang Ye would definitely make an example of them. As for the remaining 3, hand them over to the genetics department for research. I believe those scientists will be interested in dissecting mutants. Yes. Kakula hesitated for a moment and tried to say something. Boss, but Wolverine has a unique ability. He possesses an incredibly strong healing factor. In that case, just cut his flesh into pieces. I don't believe his healing speed can outpace the speed of cutting flesh. Even before Kakula could finish speaking, Fang Ye interrupted him. After a brief pause, Fang Ye gave another order. Wolverine's bones can be melted down, but keep the adamantium metal. I might find a use for it in the future. Yes. After finishing the instructions, Fang Ye waved his hand, signaling Kakula to leave. As for ordering to keep the adamantium metal, it was because Fang Ye had suddenly thought that he might create a weapon for himself. Combine the invincible power of the green giant with an unyielding and sharp weapon, and the resulting power would be terrifying. As for the design of the weapon, Fang Ye hadn't thought it through yet. Chapter 59, Tony's Return. However, as Kakula stepped back, Fang Ye didn't forget to instruct him to bring Mystique to see him. Catherine Pride, Phantom Cat, was undoubtedly the best candidate for infiltrating Stark Industries and stealing the intelligent program source code. Unfortunately, she had already escaped, so Fang Ye had to settle for the next best option. Raven Darkholme, Mystique, possessed the power of transformation and had vast experience, making her an excellent choice. Knock, knock, knock. Come in. Under the escort of a super warrior, Mystique walked into the office at a leisurely pace. Although Mystique had been brainwashed, no one could guarantee its effectiveness, as she had only undergone hypnotic brainwashing once. In Kakula's plan, more than 200 mutants needed to be brainwashed at least 10 times each to ensure their loyalty. However, with such a large number of mutants, Kakula couldn't handle it all on his own. So far, those mutants had only been brainwashed once. Fang Ye waved his hand, letting the super warrior step aside, and pointed to the sofa opposite him, inviting Mystique to sit and talk. Ms. Darkholme, I never thought we would meet again, and in such circumstances. I certainly didn't expect it either. What's even more unexpected is that Eric and Charles fought for so many years but ended up defeated by you. As she mentioned Magneto and Professor X, Mystique's tone couldn't help but become sorrowful. Fang Ye didn't interrupt Mystique's reminiscing. Human hearts were the most complex, good people had their bad sides, and bad people had their good sides. No one in the world was perfect. Mr. Fang, forgive me for the laughter. Mystique was, after all, Mystique. She quickly regained her composure. Fang Ye nodded, not beating around the bush, and spoke directly. I want you to go to Stark Industries and steal the intelligent program source code. How you do it is up to you, I only need results. I'll do my best. Mystique didn't make any grand promises because she knew infiltrating Stark Industries, just like UEI building, would be extremely challenging due to the tight security. Although she couldn't infiltrate easily, given enough time, Mystique was confident she could still accomplish the task. Over the years, she rarely disappointed Magneto with the tasks he assigned to her, not only because of her shape-shifting ability but also because she was a clever woman who knew how to seize and use any opportunity. Knock, knock, knock. As Fang Ye was talking to Mystique, sudden knocking came from outside the office. Fang Ye furrowed his brows. He had instructed not to be disturbed, so there must be something important. Come in. Boss, just an hour ago, who's this? Jennifer walked into the office, about to report to Fang Ye, but she suddenly noticed Mystique. Fang Ye glanced at Mystique and instructed, you can leave for now. Understood. Mystique didn't say much and left directly. After Mystique left, Jennifer began her report. Boss, just an hour ago, Mr. Stark has been rescued and is currently on his way back. As Jennifer knew about Fang Ye's relationship with Tony, she couldn't help but worry, knowing he had disappeared. Fang Ye's spirits lifted upon hearing this news. Tony's return meant that the Iron Man armor was already completed. However, soon after, Fang Ye's brows furrowed again because Tony's return meant the chance of Mystique successfully stealing the source code had become even smaller. Boss, do you want to go and visit Mr. Stark? Not for now. Since Tony just returned, he must have many things to handle. We shouldn't disturb him. Understood. Jennifer didn't know Fang Ye's plans. Although she had a close relationship with him, there were many things she didn't know about him. Having been in contact with this man for over 2 years, Jennifer still found Fang Ye very mysterious, as if he were covered by a veil, and his thoughts were never fully understood by others. Right? How are the preparations I asked you to make? Everything is ready. But, boss, I don't understand why we prepared those salvage equipment at such a great cost, even rented a warship from the military. What are we going to salvage? Jennifer was very puzzled, and this question had been bothering her for a whole year. She couldn't understand why Fang Ye did this and paid such a heavy price. Was it really worth it? Fang Ye glanced at her, and his tone turned cold. Things you shouldn't ask, you'd better not ask. It won't do you any good. Understood. Jennifer's heart shivered, knowing that Fang Ye rarely got angry at her. However, from this reaction, she could tell that this matter was crucial to him. Fang Ye waved his hand, asking Jennifer to leave. He didn't distrust Jennifer, there were just some things he didn't intend to involve her in. Moreover, regardless of whom he trusted, Fang Ye always kept a reservation. He wouldn't fully trust anyone because he knew that in this world, the only person he could truly trust was himself. Human hearts were ever-changing, and the most unpredictable thing in the world was undoubtedly human emotions. It's time to take action. In the original plot, the first thing Tony did upon returning was to hold a press conference. At the press conference, Tony announced that Stark Industries would shut down its weapons manufacturing department, causing Stark Industries' stock to plummet. Despite Obadiah Stana's efforts to salvage the situation, the stock still fell. Fang Ye had long prepared for this and was waiting for Tony to make the announcement. In Fang Ye's plan, he intended to purchase at least 15% of Stark Industries' shares. However, this time, he didn't need to act personally, he could leave it to his subordinates. New York, LaGuardia International Airport. Tony Stark looked haggard, his arm in a sling, as he walked out of the plane. The first person to greet him was his secretary, Pepper Potts, whom he fondly called Pepper. But at this moment, Pepper's eyes were slightly red, and her face was full of worry. There was no trace of her usual assertiveness. Seeing Pepper with red eyes, Tony couldn't help but feel moved. Are you crying because you missed your boss? I'm just glad you're back, so I don't have to find a new job. Hearing Tony's familiar tone, Pepper couldn't help but smile slightly. Recalling the days of being kidnapped, Tony couldn't help but sigh. Yeah, your vacation is over. Shall we take you to the hospital? No, I have more important things to do. I need to hold a press conference. A press conference? Pepper was slightly surprised. She couldn't keep up with Tony's thoughts and couldn't figure out what he was going to do.